Good evening and welcome to the December 15th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. The chair acknowledges the attendance of our staff members, Jen, Kevin, Alyssa, continued support of our entire staff, Mark, Amy, and Kristen. We have a full complement of commissioners tonight. Thank you all for your dedication. I'd like to remind the commissioners that for commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time. Please refrain from speaking over each other. Also, all votes have to be done by roll calls. When I call your name, state your name and your vote, even if you've made the motion or the second. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are located on the agenda. Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 regarding COVID-19 allows for full public participation. Therefore, if you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I'll call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Again, we have a full night tonight, so let's try to stay on point. First up are minutes, vote minutes, December 1st, 2021. Anybody?
I move we accept the minutes as written, subject to any changes agreed to tonight.
Bird, second.
All right. Anybody have anything for them? Perfect. Take the vote. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the very well-written minutes as submitted. Next up, requests for continuance under a notice of intent. George Topulos, 83 T-Ticket Path, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct an addition, reconfigure the driveway, renovate the deck stairs, and all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until January 5th.
Bird, so move.
Harris, second.
Yeah. All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until January 5th. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Hawks, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until January 5th. Next up, for a continuance under a notice of intent, Nicholas Pierce, 10 Pilgrim Path, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct grading within FEMA designated flood zone. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until January 5th.
Bird, so move.
Harris, second.
Okay, are we I'm gonna get flooded on January 5th now? Seems like we have a few already. Just throwing it out there.
No, I know. We were looking at that, Mr. Chairman.
Right, I'm gonna take the vote. We have a motion
After this.
to continue this
Yeah,
until January 5th. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks Eye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We continue this until January 5th.
So Jamie, I have a question on that. Did we actually open that on November 10th?
No, we discussed Pilgrim Path.
On
Yeah, we
November
did.
10th, we opened it.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I have people who were there, but sometimes I write down the names and then it's continued before. I've already written the names.
Did I do
All right. All right. Next up are requests for determination of applicability. First up, Chappaquiddick Associates, care of DJ Boss, 0 Associates Road, Assessors Map 24-03-003-000, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to replace the existing tennis court in kind, to add additional netting, and to prune trees and remove invasive plants around the tennis court. Mr. Newton.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the bylaw and under the state. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Thank you. Anybody?
I move that
Make a
we
motion to
accept
accept
staff.
staff's recommendation.
Thank
Harris,
you.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. That wasn't me. Betsy,
Wasn't me either, but Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks Eye.
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Stephen W. and Janine S. Hanson, 57 Sippowisset Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a 12 by 16 foot shed. Mr. Newton.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
O'Brien, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks Eye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up are requests for hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. And as a reminder, commenting is limited to 3 minutes. So I encourage you to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and how they pertain to a particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to the hearing. First up, Hushangpur, 7 Southview Way, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove an unpermitted deck and to reconstruct the deck according to FWR regulations. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Mike Borselli up. Here he is. So he can present the project.
Oh, Mike?
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
I represent the applicant Husheng Kaur. He has a property located at number 7 Southview Way. It has frontage on Flax Pond, and the wetland resources under review include land under a water body, an inland bank, and a bordering vegetated wetland. All of the associated no disturbance zone A's and outer buffer zone B's are depicted on the plan. In this case, they're all 100-foot no disturbance zone A's because they border on an area that is considered an area for rare and endangered species and in accordance with MESA regulations. So we've shown the 100-foot no disturbance zone A to the inland bank and the BVW on the plan. Falmouth Engineering was retained to cure some non-compliance matters on the property. An order of conditions was issued back in the mid-2000s to allow for the construction of a deck. That deck is shown in a tan color on my plan. The order of conditions was issued, recorded, the work was done, and a certificate of compliance was never applied for. I was contacted recently to review the property for compliance and discovered it was not in compliance. I also was able to review records from your files that indicated that the owner had been notified of the non-compliance matters and that he was it was demanded that he cure the non-compliances. For whatever reason that I can't speak to or defend, those things did not happen. I'm here now to get permission to cure those non-compliance matters. So what the non-compliance matter was that the applicant's contractor constructed a deck that was bigger than what was approved. If you look on my plan, I'm hovering my mouse over an area of existing deck that was built outside of what was approved. What was approved is shown in tan color. And there was some required mitigation planting associated with that. I actually have the original plan that was approved for your reference. It's shown here. Existing deck, proposed deck expansion, and there was a proposed addition with rinse station underneath. And if you see this plan and then compare it to what actually was constructed, this was built without permission. So we're here tonight to get permission to remove that section of deck and rebuild to the approved dimensions from the order of conditions. And I reference the date of the order, the DEP file number, and I indicate that it's shaded in tan. This existing deck, although permitted and existing, is in a state of disrepair and really should be replaced. So we're proposing to remove all of the deck, including the unpermitted portions, and then rebuild back to what was allowed under the original order of conditions. I also note on the plan and shaded in green some existing vegetated buffers that were required to be planted, and I think they're spotty at best, and I'm suggesting that they be enhanced with additional planting in the same areas where they were originally required to be. I also observed on site there was a stone walkway that was not on the approved plan that was constructed, and I'm suggesting and proposing that stone walk to be removed. And I think that sums it up. I'm happy to answer questions.
Mr. Borselli, Jen?
Mr. Chairman, Mike, the area under the deck extension that you're removing, it was ordered to be restored in the old orders. So we'd like that area to be planted as well.
Absolutely. I didn't know what restored meant. I defer to whatever you think needs to happen or whatever you think should be conditioned where should be in a condition of the approval.
Okay. We can condition that. Then Mike, when Alyssa was on site, she noticed they're using kind of that bank to access the pond. We may want you to put a little break in the vegetation so it allows them an access path down to the water. They're kind of using it.
Okay.
If you just kind of plant it, the plants will get trampled. So
Understood.
might be something worth looking at. And I think that's it, unless Kevin Newton has anything to add.
No, I just remember meeting with Mike probably 2 months ago to go over some of these items, and I think he's addressing them now. Mr. Chairman.
That's what we like to hear. All right. Commissioner comments, questions? Betsy?
No comments. Thanks.
Courtney?
No questions.
Kevin?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Maury? Pat?
No questions, thank you.
Peter?
I have a question for Jen. Was there an outstanding order that was disregarded?
There was a denial order. You mean the fine? So back in 2006, this board did condition that denial with a statement that said that the deck needed to be removed or there would be a $50 a day assessed fine until the deck was removed. That fine or fee, whatever you would like to call it, has not been collected.
And so far as we know, the deck has not been removed yet from 5 years ago?
Correct.
Okay. No further questions?
15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Steve?
Yeah.
No question. Seems to be a sincere effort to try to correct a problem that was.
I
That's it.
agree. Thank you. All right, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Nothing in the chat. No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All
No
right,
hands raised, so.
all right, folks, what are you thinking?
I'd make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement, Mr. Chairman.
Bird, second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to close this hearing. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Who's that look for? Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawk's eye.
Pat?
RSI.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the concise presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, next up. George Botello Jr., George L. Botello, year 2019, Revocable Living Trust, 22 Flax Pond Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to replace an existing floating dock with an entirely fixed dock fitted with a bubbler system. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm just looking for Attorney Wall. He wanted to be promoted up as a panelist. Just found him. Brian should be in any minute. And then Mike's here to present his project.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Michael Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. I represent the applicant, George Botello. Mr. Botello is actually at my office. And if there's questions for him, he'll be happy to sit in my seat and answer them. If I could share my screen.
Yes, sir.
The property in question is shown on the plan in front of you. There's an existing single-family dwelling, detached garage, and other typical landscape areas typical of a residential property. By coincidence, this project too has frontage on Flax Pond. So the wetland resources under your review are land under a water body, inland bank, and there's a sandy beach. There's no BBW in this case. The Botello family has, since the early 70s, had a floating dock in Flax Pond that they use for passive recreational purposes like fishing, swimming, kayaking, canoeing. And it was a family property that George has acquired, and this is his residence. He learned through the years that although the dock has been there since the 70s and been removed on a seasonal basis, it has no Chapter 91 license. And he wanted to proceed through the process that would allow him to license the dock so that it was transferable in the future if the property were to change hands. So the first step is to apply to you for permission either to continue to use the existing dock or perhaps propose improvements. That's what we're proposing here. Is we're proposing to improve the dock by eliminating the floating dock system and installing an entirely fixed dock that is in compliance with your regulations for dock construction. The floating dock and the new fixed dock would be in the same location as shown on the plan. I show a profile of the dock with the floating dock in the background. You can see the floating dock system here and the proposed fixed dock superimposed. It would be the same width and length into the pond. It would have the same size T as has been on the dock since the 70s. Instead of floating, it'll be entirely fixed. I've applied for 2 or 3 other docks like this on the pond and received orders of conditions. This is similar. It would eliminate the floating dock and it would have a bubbler system so it could be maintained throughout the season, and there'd be no need to have activities seasonally to remove it, haul it, and store it in the upland. We're also proposing that there be an allowance for seasonal water and electric to the dock, and that is also shown on the plan. I am happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mike. Ben?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We're recommending the board be provided a little bit more information on the grandfathering of this dock because the float size does not meet your current regulations. It's 20 square feet too big. So our suggestion in any time the board grandfathers or a dock, you're provided a little bit more information than what was provided in this application. So we'd like to see something that shows that T section with that large float before staff would recommend approving it at that size. And then I think that's all we have really on the dock itself. And then just on a few cleanup items on the property. The shed should be removed on the property. It's currently within the property and the road layout. The picket fence is on the town side of that private road, so that should be removed. The town has the property across the way, and the public is allowed to use that property. So the picket fence kind of makes it appear to be private property. It's really not. And we would ask that the Airbnb guest parking sign be taken off the town's property as well, the conservation parcel. That is for the public to use and not guests of the applicant. Other than that, I think that's all we have.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak to just one thing? I'm going to
Yes, sir.
focus on the dock only. So regarding the grandfathering and providing more information. First off, I failed to mention this is subject to MESA review. We have not heard back from MESA, but this is priority habitat, as is all of Flax Pond, and they haven't commented yet.
We have to continue it anyway.
So we have to continue it anyway. So we're going to try to find some more photographic evidence. If we're unsuccessful, I'll be revising the plan to make the T meet the maximum allowed 100-foot size on the T instead of currently proposed to be replacing at 120 square feet. So that the onus is on us. The aerial photo evidence is just not there because it's seasonal. So it's going to be difficult. And if we can't prove it, the onus is on us. We'll revise it to a 10 by 10.
No, that works. And is your client agreeable to clean up all the other items that I mentioned if he's sitting behind you?
Those are required by law.
He's saying he is amenable.
I don't think that's what he said, but okay, that's fine.
Anything else, Jen?
Nope, unless Kevin has anything to add.
No, Mr. Chairman, nothing to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wall, do you have anything you'd like to add at this point? Or you're on mute, sir.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. No, not at this time. I'll wait till talk to my client about those issues in the road. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments, questions. Steve?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Harris seems to have an important issue for you.
Yes, she does.
Thank you, Steve.
Go ahead, Pat.
Mr. Chair, I just need to make a disclosure regarding my professional relationship with Attorney Wall. It's regarding matters outside the jurisdiction of the commission. I've filed my disclosure with the town clerk, outlining the relationship and stating that I can act without prejudice on matters presented to the commission by Attorney Wall. I'm making this disclosure to dispel any appearance of a conflict of interest. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, what are your comments or questions, Pat?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also don't have any questions. I don't have any questions.
Okay. See some hesitancy there. Raise your hand if you have something else, if you want me to come back. Peter?
No questions or comments.
Okay. Maury?
The only two questions I had, because I think the staff did a good job for all the cleanup things, were what are the piles going to be made of? I know that they're not CCA, and also how are we going to drive the piles? You bring in a barge in?
Yes, I can answer that. They're going to be non-CCA, likely green heart, but the regulation says non-CCA. They're not, so that will certainly be the case. There's access over the association beach area. There's going to be a small work barge that'll be delivered and floated over, and the piles will be driven from the pond.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, just to clarify, the regulations for freshwater docks like this say no chemically treated wood whatsoever. It doesn't specifically specify CCA, it just says no chemically treated wood.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Likely to be green heart, which is a native
Mhm.
material.
Kevin,
The only thing that interests me at this point is the finding on the B&B sign for the parking lot. And I don't
Were you
think
looking for a
we'll
place
have
to
the
park?
answer to that tonight. Other than that, I'm fine.
Courtney,
No questions.
Betsy?
No questions.
All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
No, Mr. Chairman. And no hands raised either, so I don't think anybody wants to speak on this project.
Okay. All right, Mr. Borselli, do you have a formal request for us?
Yes, since we haven't heard from MISA, and I can't predict when we will hear from MISA, I'm going to request January 12th in hopes that we get it by then. January 5th, I know you have a full agenda, and I don't see that. I think when we do continue it, it's going to be a short presentation, but I would hate to continue to the 5th only to have to continue again, so I'm going to ask for the 12th.
We appreciate that.
Request of the applicant, I'll move to continuing this to the 12th. Assuming there's room on the agenda.
There is. I accidentally snuck Mike one in on the 5th, or I was going to try to get him to the 12th, but we voted the 5th, so we're fine. I mean, the 12th is free.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Harris.
All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this until January 12th. Mike, you're clear on what staff's looking for?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Well, us in general. Thank you. All right. I'll take the vote. If there's no further questions or comments. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Word, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
And I,
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until January 12th.
Thank you.
Mr. Borselli. Thank you, Mr. Wall. All right. Next up. Ellen Varim, trustee, Fells 9 Realty Trust, 9 Fells Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to demolish an existing single-family dwelling, to construct a new single-family dwelling, to redesign landscape features, to conduct invasive species management, and to install restoration and mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to move Brian and Mike back into the attendees, and then I will be moving Dave Martin and Jen Crawford up. Just give me 1 second. I'm trying to do this as fast as possible. So I should be, I've got David and Jen Crawford should be coming in momentarily. Here she is.
Thank you. Hi, Jen. Hi, David. Who's going to
Evening.
start? Don't be shy. Jen,
That's me.
David, who's going to start? Jen,
Me.
you're gonna? Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you said you were going to start. All right, so yeah, both David and I are here on behalf of the applicant tonight. The project is located at 9 Fells Road down in Woods Hole abutting Oyster Pond. There's a velocity zone, the associated 25-foot buffer zone, as well as a coastal bank, buffer zones A and B. And a portion of the property is within NHESP priority habitat. The project is pretty straightforward. There's an existing dwelling in the Zone B buffer to the coastal bank. There's a few small garden areas on the property, several segments of stone wall in both the A and B buffer zones, as well as a fairly wide footpath with some degraded timber steps that leading down to Oyster Pond. As far as the existing vegetation conditions go, most of the canopy there are comprised of native trees. The photo included in our land management plan shows the existing footpath down to the water, which is basically located down the center of the property. To the left, as you're looking at the water, there is a mix of native understory as well as a few invasives. To the right, as you're looking at the water, it's basically all invasive vines or aggressive brambles and herbaceous material. The project essentially proposes to raise and rebuild the existing dwelling much in the same location, along with the same landscape features, mostly the same landscape features that are already there: a stone terrace, a screened porch, a small outdoor kitchen area. All of those are located in the outer Zone B, just as existing. Portions of the stone wall, of a stone wall actually, there's a few of them, are proposed for removal from Zone A, near to the top of the coastal bank, and other sections are proposed to be rebuilt. Those are all documented on the plans. In addition, the existing footpath is proposed to be narrowed to the 4-foot width that is in your regulations, and we are proposing to replace the degraded timber steps with some in-grade stone steps for longevity. There is an extensive restoration package included of the property, as well as more than the required mitigation areas. The mitigation areas are all being placed in Zone A and are either reducing lawn areas or unvegetated areas that are currently unvegetated. In the end, we are removing coverage from Zone A, and the small amount of coverage that we are additional coverage that we're proposing in Zone B, we've mitigated for. The comments by staff, late in the day today, I was actually able to send over some revisions on a plan. I don't expect that you will have had time to look at those, of course, but I'd like to let you know what they contain, so to speak. One of the recommendations.
Jen, do you have a plan? Do you want? Yeah, why don't you share the plan?
Yeah.
You can share the one you sent this afternoon. We're just not going to be able to discuss it. I mean, we're not going to be able to close tonight until we look at it. I really appreciate you trying to address our comments.
Well, and we don't have a DEP file number, nor have we heard from NHESP yet. So, yeah. So what we did for the can you guys all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Actually, no, that was the right one. Yes. So some of the changes or some of the staff comments and things that we updated were the recommendation to replace some of the sweet fern and sweet gale with other larger species. So we did do that in these restoration areas. I didn't feel that it was as appropriate to replace them adjacent to the footpath. I think long-term, some of these shrub species, as you know, will get very, very large. And I think that the species proposed adjacent to the footpath will, they're still going to be valuable wildlife habitat. They're still going to increase the native species diversity. And I think that they are more appropriate alongside the path. So the ones that were further into the restoration areas, I did replace, as well as added plethora down at the water's edge. We didn't have anything shown for planting in there previously, so we added some. The hazelnut are specified on our plan at a 1 to 2 gallon size. It was recommended that we plant larger. I have not ever had any be available at larger sizes through any of our regular wholesalers. So if anybody knows where I can get some, that would be great. I can, of course, if it comes time to plant this project and it's approved, we can definitely look into that. But historically, larger sizes of that particular species have not been available. The square footage of the 2 restoration areas is now included on the plan, along with the labels. So those revisions have been, or those updates have been added for you. The agent had a question about the term interfering limbs, so to speak, that was listed in, I believe, in our land management plan in this section. It took me a little while to find that particular phrase, but I think that a better way to have phrased that, those 2 particular words would have been to describe it as crossing branches or limbs. It was intended to allow us to basically make any minor pruning cuts for health of trees or shrubs. So I think that would be a better way to describe it. The last item that the staff had comments about were some discrepancies between the restoration plan and the site plan submitted by David Martin. And that was just simply a few items somehow got turned off in our CAD file. So we did add those items. They're clouded over here in the left for you, and our coverage calculations were updated accordingly. Oh, and the other thing was a small discrepancy in this area of the plan. And again, that was just our field notes overrode, so to speak, the survey base. So we defaulted back to David's original survey in that area. So this area that was counted as mitigation area moved into the restoration area. So again, those calculations were updated accordingly, and we still exceed the required mitigation for the project. So those were the proposed revisions that we wanted to put in front of you in order to address staff comments. And like I said, we have no DEP file number and we do not have comment from any GSP yet, but I would welcome your thoughts.
Thank you. You can stop sharing at this point, Jen. Thanks. Dave, do you have anything you want to add at this point?
Nothing at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Where's Jen Lincoln?
I'm right here. I think Jen, really attempted to address all of our concerns. I'm really not going to be able to comment on the revisions she's made. But it seems that she has addressed them all. So we'll look forward to working with her to finalize a plan for the board's next hearing. Jen, the only thing, I need you to share your screen again so I can what I noticed, the discrepancies between your plan and David's plan, and I didn't even notice the one that you actually put on, was the outline of the stone terrace on David's plan, and then you have it as proposed patio, and you have it drawn a little bit more architecturally, pleasing. I think those 2 little shortened or 4 little shortened steps or pieces are not reflected in Dave's plan. So
yes,
they go or they go on to Dave's plan. So either one, because they're not, obviously moving any, into a zone A. And I think you've got plenty of room, even from the 50 foot of that top of bank. It looks like Dave's plan that you might be able to just squish them in there. So either your plan or Dave's plan.
All right, we'll work that out.
Yeah, and you must have said it, but I might have missed it. Did you put a square footage of, or the percent?
Yep.
You did the percentage. Did you give us a square foot total of those areas? Perfect.
I did. Yep,
Okay,
they've
so
been
we'll
added
take a
on-
look at
on
that.
Revised plan.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that and we'll probably be in touch with you early next
Yep.
week.
Yep,
Perfect.
that sounds
Thank
good.
you,
One
Jen.
thing because I know exactly what you're gonna do with those numbers. So the one thing that I wanted to note is that this whole portion of the site is basically vines and ground cover.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to make sure that that was noted.
Okay, nope, that's fine. We'll have a discussion with you next week and, we can hash it out then.
Perfect. You want me to stop sharing?
Yes, please, sorry.
That's okay.
All right. Anything else, Jen?
Nothing else to add, Mr. Chairman, unless Kevin Newton has anything.
No, Mr. Chairman, nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we know this is being continued, but I'm going to poll for comments anyway, at least preliminarily. Maury,
I just had a couple questions. In that area along the pond that you're gonna put the clethra that's already vegetated, is that gonna be restoration or mitigation planting?
There we go. Sorry. That is included in the restoration area.
Okay. And then the other question I have, which I think the staff addressed properly, that the sweet fern, I know you like to have it along the path, but maybe moving something woody indigenous further from the path. Sweet fern gets obliterated. We watch it all the time. And I would like this board, we do 3 gallon, 3 foot on center, or 2 to 3 gallon, 3 foot on center. And that's always like the standard. And when I see these plans, there's 196 plants, 60 of them are sweet fern, and it's in an area that they're talking about, almost, what is it, 20 something, 1,800 square feet. So I just think we have to be consistent, because I keep seeing some engineers, some projects come in front of us that are, 2 to 3 gallon, 3 foot on center, and then you get these and they're, 8 to 12 feet apart. So I don't know what we're going to do about that, but maybe in this plan, I'd like to see a little more dense planting than 200 plants, less than 200 plants in 2,000 square feet. Thank you.
thank you. Pat,
No questions, thank you.
Peter,
No questions. Thank you.
Steve,
No questions, thank you.
Kevin,
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Courtney,
No questions.
Betsy.
No questions.
Wow. All right, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Crawford, you have a formal request for us?
I would love to continue to your next date that you can fit me in.
How about the 12th, Jen?
Let's shoot for the 12th.
Let's
Hopefully
shoot
I
for the
should have
12th.
comment back by then.
All right. I'll entertain a motion in a second to that.
I'll move to continue the hearing until the 12th.
Our second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until January 12th. There's no further questions or comments. Betsy,
Filter eye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Harlow
I
Hawks
can
eye.
read. Thank you. Pat,
Our side.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve,
Aye.
it is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until January 12th. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Jen, just let me know when you have availability next week and I'll make it work.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Dave was a chatty Cathy tonight. Man, couldn't stop him. All right, next up.
You wanted me to keep moving, so I know.
I appreciate that. Less is more. All right, next up, Joseph and Lucia Giangrasso, 55 Little Island Road, Nominee Trust, West Falmouth, Mass. That's weird. Okay. Full permission to remove an existing deck, install a pool, and to install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting, I think, Mike Borselia to present his project.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
Mike, long time no see.
If you look, you'll see another mug in my screen. That's Ralph Cataldo. He's
Oh,
the general contractor for this project. If you issue a favorable order of conditions, he will be supervising the project. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
The Giangrassos have a property at number 55 Little Island Road. It has a long driveway off of the road to a parking area. There's an existing single-family dwelling. On the north side of the property, there is a bordering vegetated wetland that was reviewed and approved by Conservation Commission at a previous hearing. An order of conditions was issued in 2011. I'm sharing a plan that shows the flagging of that wetland and what that project was back at that time. Ralph Cataldo was the general contractor at that time for a proposed addition and associated mitigation planting that's shown on this plan. We were hired to advance a plan to apply for permission to install this pool in this location. So you can see the addition that was proposed back then is obviously now in place, and the mitigation planting that was required is shown shaded in a light green, and we are showing another area in dark green. I will get to that in a minute. The proposed project, though, is a resource area buffer project. So it falls under your regulations at FWR 10.18. We have shown the no disturbance zone A, which is 50 feet here. And we've shown the 50-foot outer buffer zone B as well. Because we're doing redevelopment, any increases in impervious surfaces would require mitigation at a ratio of 2-to-1 because we're proposing work in the B zone. The size of the pool is such that the required mitigation would not be possible because of the limited area available to provide the mitigation planting. So in an effort to be able to install a pool, the client has proposed to remove some impervious surfaces to result in a net increase of impervious surfaces in the amount of 92 square feet. How are we doing that? If you look closely at the plan, you will see there's an existing deck that was on and approved on the previous project that we're proposing to remove. A significant portion of it is in the no disturbance zone A, and another section of it is in the outer buffer zone B. We're proposing to eliminate that deck. The pool is something that's important to the applicant's family, and they're willing to eliminate the deck and reduce it to just a small entry to compensate for that impervious surface. There's also a set of stairs off of this small entry deck that are proposed to be reduced in size as well. All of this was reviewed on site with Mr. Cataldo, and the math is outlined on the plan, so that the net result is that while we're adding impervious surface here, we're eliminating it in other locations. And the work is done entirely within the outer buffer zone B. Now the mitigation planting requirement is only 200 square feet, and we're proposing to install that in this area that I've shown crosshatched, which is in all cases more than 10 feet from the structure. So that'll enhance the buffer to the BBW, similarly to what was originally required and shown here in the light gray color. I'm sorry, green color. There's another darker green. I'm hoping you can see the contrast that we noticed was not planted. The original approved plan shows that area was supposed to be mitigation planting. I can't speak to why it's not, but at this point in time, that area is not mitigation planting. So we're proposing that that be replanted such that it reverts back to what was required to be planted and maintained in perpetuity, and then enhanced with the 200 square feet that we're required to in this location, so that the buffer is then reestablished or enhanced so that it's a continual buffer. All of it is more than 10 feet from any proposed structures or existing structures, and is the amount required by the ratio of 2 to 1. We also noticed that there were 2 trees required. They're shown here. It says proposed native trees, 5 to 6 foot, typical of 2. And I believe the 2 are right here, 1, 2. And we also observed on this plan an existing tree. When we visited the site, these trees were not in place. We're proposing to replace those trees. Construction access is along the side of the structure over the gravel driveway. We've met with the site contractor to ensure that there's adequate access to bring a piece of equipment in to do the excavation for the pool. There's an existing dry well in conflict with the pool location. We're proposing to relocate outside of the pool footprint in this location. We show a limit of work on the plan. The limit of work is 10 feet from the proposed pool, and then it runs along the edge of the existing mitigation as shown on the plan with a line type with small circles. When we filed our application and notified abutters, there is a direct abutter to the west, Gerard Rubino and Nancy McGuire Rubino, who had some concerns about preserving the area on the common boundary and not having construction equipment encroach or have encroachment over the property line due to our project. So we've had conversations through their attorney, Brian Wall, about those concerns, and we're planning to work with them and mitigate against their concerns by installing a limit of work to wrap around further along the property line. So it'll be a visual barrier to the construction crew that's going to do the pool and gain access around the side of the building. Ralph's, as recently as this morning, has been to the site because of this concern and scoped it out with the site contractor, and he can speak to this as well. There is adequate access. We will probably shift this dry well a little bit away from the property line just to make sure that there's no potential for an encroachment during the installation of the dry well. We're confident that there'll be no issues with the pool. So I think we satisfied the abutters' concerns about possible impacts to the property just over the common boundary. I believe that the project meets your requirements, specifically at FWR 10.18. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and as well as Mr. Tuttle is happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mike, can you go over what you said about the different areas for mitigation? So the darker green was previously mitigation plantings that were not there.
Yes, the darker green is an area that was required to be mitigation for the previous project that currently, based on my observation, is bark mulch. So we're proposing to replant it so that it's back to what was required.
And what about the light green?
The light green is what was required and still in place.
Okay.
Until you get to this point. This is new proposed mitigation for the 92 square foot net increase of impervious surfaces from the proposed pool project.
Yep. So in that case, where that is, it looks like since you're going to be removing that deck, the regulations do say that they need to be as close to the resource area as possible. So this isn't reflected in the staff report. I was just looking at it. I'd like to see that area of mitigation kind of move to where your corner of your deck is.
Over here?
Yep. I think that's a more appropriate area for them and is more in compliance with the regulations than you currently have it drawn.
Understood.
Okay. You may have addressed it, and I may have just gone on one ear out the other. Does it have an automatic pool cover?
Yes, automatic pool cover, so no fence is necessary.
No fence is necessary. And I mean, to me, it just seems odd. I know you can't put a patio around it because of the mitigation requirement. It just seems odd that they're just going to come out of the pool and onto lawn.
Yeah, we talked about it. We had Ralph, maybe you want to speak to this. We had the pool company here. We talked about all of these. I educated everyone on the mitigation planting requirement and how we were very limited, and the family understood. We laid things out, we staked it out, we talked about what would have to be done, and the pool is just much more important to them than in their extended family than anything else. So they're willing to, they understand.
They're willing to chop off that like take away that deck, so they're gonna have really like.
Yes.
You realize that there won't be able to be a patio will not be able to be put back, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, and we would expect there should be a finding about that. They were educated.
Yeah, it was just a little kind of concerning to me not to see that. And then there was one last thing, and I can't find the staff report. Did you identify what kind of trees?
The old plan that was approved didn't specify, and I would defer to staff. I'm happy to propose something.
We can propose something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
I mean, I have to revise the plan to in response to concerns by the neighbors and whatever other comments or suggested changes like you just mentioned. So
Okay.
I can spec the trees at that time. I can consult with you about it.
Yeah, that's fine. And you can add your stepping stones from your small deck to your rinse station on your plan.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yep. And I think that's about it. And tell your client to stop, or advise your client to stop pruning his mitigation.
Yes, I've already sent the staff report to them.
Excellent.
Mr. Newton?
Mike, I apologize if you answered this already, but do you need to apply to zoning for this?
No.
Okay. I was just looking at the setbacks there with distance between the house and the pool, and
No, the only
I
zoning,
wasn't sure if that would have
there'd
triggered
be
something.
no zoning review unless it were a modification of a non-conforming structure. And it meets the 10-foot setback to the property line.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, commission comments. Kevin?
No comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Maury?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Pat?
I just want to make the disclosure. I understand that Brian Wall is representing the abutters. I know he hasn't spoken tonight, but he might in the future. And I just want to make the disclosure I made earlier regarding my professional relationship with him and that I can act impartially in this matter. No other comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Peter?
No questions or comments.
Steve?
No comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Courtney?
I realize the applicant is trying to juggle a lot of balls in the air and trying to make everything work. I am concerned that there is no patio or anything surrounding that pool. And it's currently lawn, and I worry going forward whether or not they'll end up being pavers or other things that appear in there to reduce the amount of grass right around there. I know we can condition that. I just want to make sure the client understands or applicant understands that he can't have anything around there other than grass.
He does understand that. In fact, if I could, I can't share it, but Ralph was just showing me a photo of the pool setting with just the grass around that he shared with the owners, and they understand that's the way it would be. They were provided with a photo of it, of that same exact scenario from the pool company.
Okay.
Can you show that in the screen?
I don't think we can show it in the screen.
We've actually had several landscape architects propose this for us. We've done a few of these pools with lawn on 3 or 4 sides, and it wouldn't be my favorite choice, but it is for some people. It's a little bit of a maintenance issue when you're on the ocean with wind blowing and cutting the grass and leaves and things like that. But both 2 or 3 owners have accepted that, you know, in my historical past.
Okay. I mean, you understand where I'm coming from on the concern on it. You know, I just worry about the tendency of people wanting to adapt things afterwards. And, you know.
I understand what you're saying.
No other comments. I think it's, you know, you've worked hard to try to make this work.
Thank you. Betsy?
I just have one comment. The storm knocking over that big tree is going to make access to the back. I'm sure you had nothing to do with that, but.
Thankfully, it blew that direction.
Left you a big path.
Yeah. One of the things additionally that we're going to do besides remove the tree, Betsy, is I don't know if you've been out to the site, but there's like a big Alberta spruce in the corner, probably 4 feet in diameter. We're going to remove that. We're probably going to disconnect the condenser that's there in the corner, give a little more elbow room over there. That's going to be removed and put back. So it'll be a lot more room in that corner. And I know, Mike, I can't see it from here, but I don't think there's a dimension on the pool. It's not very wide. It's only 12 feet, I think.
Yeah, it's 12.
It's 12 feet. So in perspective, that's a sheet and a half of plywood. So it's not very wide. And lengthwise, I think it's probably 30, I think, Mike?
I think it's 32.
So 32 would be 4 sheets of plywood. So the excavation's not too bad. And the access will be fine for us, no problem. We'll put a fence up along the property line.
All right. Betsy, you all set?
All set, thank you.
All right. Jen, public chat comments.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Brian Wall has a chat for everyone. I represent the abutters, Mr. and Mrs. Rubino. Mr. Borselli accurately represented our conversations about my client's concerns. My client, I think he meant but Mr. Clients understand that the agreement will be reflected in notes on the revised plan that will be submitted.
All right. Are there any other public chat function comments, questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Borselli, you have a formal request for us?
Yeah, I don't want to be presumptuous. I assume these revisions would require a continuance.
Yes, Mike. And you don't have a file number. And hearing, no, you don't have a file number.
Okay.
I just checked.
Well,
wait a minute, this is 55 Little Island.
Yep.
Yep, I don't think you have. The 19th, Mike?
There's no room on the 12th?
No, because you just sent me that message that you wanted to move 80 to the 12th. So now we've got 4 on the 5th, 4 on the 12th. So I'm going to have to bump you to the 19th.
That's fine. That's my request.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to that effect.
And as a request of the applicant, I continue this until January 19th.
Bird second.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second to continue this until January 19th. If there's no other comments or questions, I'm taking the vote. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Carla Hawks, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
Thank you. It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until January 19th. Thank you, Mr. Borselli. Thank you, Mr. Cataldo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, you're sticking around for your last one, right?
Yes. I have
Okay.
two.
Oh, okay.
You next.
I'm going to put Mr. Borselli back into attendees and start moving that project team up, Mr. Chairman.
All right, next up are continued hearings under a notice of intent. First up, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, 86 Water Street, Woods Hole, Mass. For permission to replace the existing Iceland Marine facility at 86 Water Street in Woods Hole. The proposed work will involve A, the in-kind replacement of the existing pile-supported dock, B, reconstruction and reconfiguration of the deteriorated bulkhead and small boat slips, C, installation of an autonomous vessel port, D, dredging along the facility's west berth, and E, site redevelopment, including demolition of the Iceland building, excuse me, and construction of a new waterfront building. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm still trying to get this project team
Okay.
promoted. And along with this project team, I'm going to be promoting Trey from Applied Coastal, who did the review on behalf of the Conservation Commission. Jack, I think I have everyone. I don't see Mr. Dunk yet.
Dwight may be joining us late. If we could just keep an eye out for him, Jen, as we move through the day, perhaps advance him and promote him when he joins as an attendee.
Okay. Justin Just if Justin, our IT support, could watch out for Dwight Dunk in the attendees and promote him up when he comes in, that will be helpful to me while I'm trying to listen to this.
Jen,
Okay, I think I have everybody. I think I have your whole team, Jack.
Wonderful, great.
Jen,
Well,
Jen, can you move me out?
Okay, let me move Betsy out.
And I don't think I'm on the quorum either.
You're not, Maury,
Okay.
but you could be sitting there. I have to recuse myself.
Yeah, I gotta boot Betsy out for a sec. Somebody remind me to bring her back in after. Pat, I'm gonna.
With Chairman Matthews' permission, I'd like to share my screen.
1 second, Jack, please. Procedurally, so for the record, Betsy is recused and Maury is not on the quorum. Everyone else is. Now you're up, Mr. Vaccaro. Thank you.
Jack, if you could just introduce your whole project team for the record, that would be great.
I'll be happy to do that. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Vaccaro. I'm with Epsilon Associates, and with me this evening are Rob Munier and Leslie Ann McGee of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and also subject experts Dwight Dunk of Epsilon Associates, who will be joining us later, Leslie Fields of Woods Hole Group, and Eliza Cox of the law firm Nutter, McClellan, and Fish. I wanted to just spend a few minutes, as few as possible, to just run through a brief presentation. It has been a while since we first got together with the commission, and I think it would be everyone's benefit to update everyone on some recent activities. So we're going to talk about that recent action. We're going to do just a very brief summary of description of the project, and then I want to focus a little bit on the revision to our variance request. So as far as the recent permitting activities, of course, on August 25th, we presented the notice of intent to the Falmouth Conservation Commission, at which time we provided a presentation that described the project setting, the anticipated impacts to the resource areas, and proposed mitigation. Following that presentation, the commission voted for the project to undergo third-party peer review at WHOI's expense. During the late August and September, while your conservation administrator was going through the process of engaging a peer review consultant, WHOI conducted a series of site tours that were provided to the conservation commissioners and interested members of the public. The peer review officially got underway in early October, and comments were received back from the peer review consultant on November 10th. Those comments were primarily focused on the two areas of the project for which variants were being sought. Specifically, those were variances related to eelgrass and construction in the Falmouth VE zone. We prepared and submitted responses to all of the peer review comments, as well as additional comments received from the Falmouth Conservation Commission, Division of Marine Fisheries, and others on November 24th. Subsequently, additional input was received from county and regional CRS coordinators regarding anticipated flood risk and how the project could potentially impact community flood insurance rates. And based on that input, the Seawater team decided to withdraw the request for a variance from FWR 10.384 for the siting of the building within the Falmouth VE zone. Most recently, a revised variance request in responses to comments was submitted to the commission last Friday for presentation this evening. And even more recent than that, just today, we did receive some additional staff comments that we're prepared to address this evening. So briefly, just again, hitting on the major elements of this project. The Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is proposing to replace the existing Island Marine facility with a more modern, resilient, and adaptable complex to serve the anticipated needs through the 21st century. The project includes demolition of the existing buildings and construction of a new waterfront building, demolition and reconstruction of the existing pile-supported dock, reconstruction of the deteriorated bulkhead and reconfiguration of the small boat slips located along the Eel Pond entrance channel, replacement and formalization of the robotics port, and dredging along the facility's east berth. It also includes a relocation of the test well to the most seaward portion of the dock. This figure shows the extent of the FEMA designated VE zone overlaid on an existing conditions plan. You'll note that portions of the existing structure are located within the VE zone and also, of course, within the presumptive Falmouth V zone, which extends 20 feet further into the site. The proposed seawater project will replace the most seaward of the existing structures with a new waterfront building that is moved further from the water. The new building is located entirely outside of the FEMA zone with only approximately 1,500 square feet within the presumptive Falmouth V zone. So just toggling back and forth between these two slides, you can see that it's a significant movement of this structure, of these structures back onto land, further from the water. And I just want to point out that it also involves a reduction in the total square footage of building footprint from around 48,000 square feet to 45,000 square feet. So moving on to our revised variance request, as part of the project's notice of intent application, we had initially requested variance from two of the performance standards that are stated in the Falmouth Wetland Regulation. However, as a result of the recent consultation with county and regional CRS coordinators, and upon further analysis of the performance standards related to land subject to coastal storm flowage, project team has withdrawn the request for relief from FWR 10.384D, and rather will demonstrate to the commission that the project does in fact satisfy the performance standards for land subject to coastal storm flowage and can be permitted as proposed without that variance. The variance request revision does not affect the previously submitted request for relief from FWR 10.161H5, which is needed to allow dock construction within 50 feet of eelgrass. That separate variance request is still applicable to this notice of intent application, and justification for that variance has been demonstrated in previously submitted materials. So let's now take a look at a close look at this section of the Falmouth Wetland Regulation, specifically FWR 10.38, land subject to coastal storm flowage. And really, in order to demonstrate how the seawater project complies with this performance standards for that resource area, we really need to first consider the functions of that resource area and the functions of specifically of the resource area as it exists at the site. These functions are identified for us in the introductory paragraph of FWR 10.38, where it states that land subject to coastal storm flowage is significant to storm damage prevention and flood control, and is likely significant to wildlife habitat, recreation, aesthetics, erosion and sediment control, and water pollution control. This photograph shows the area where, This photograph shows the area where the new waterfront building will encroach upon the presumptive Falmouth V zone. As you can see, it is occupied by existing structures and paved area. In this developed state, the area does not provide wildlife habitat or recreation or aesthetic resources. Additionally, because it's completely encapsulated by impervious surfaces, it does not provide the functions of sediment erosion control or water pollution control. This area is entirely functioning as a resource that provides for storm damage prevention and flood control. The performance standards are pretty specific. Under 10.384D, this is actually the section of the regulation where we had requested the variance. And we need to really take a good close look at this. This section of the regulation restricts activities that destroy or otherwise impair the function of the resource area or have an adverse effect on adjacent wetland resource areas. So this section really describes a conditional performance standard that prohibits structures that encroach upon the presumptive Falmouth V zone only when the preceding language applies. So we need to take really unpack this paragraph to explain how our project meets this performance standard. As already discussed, the functions of the land subject to coastal storm flowage at this site and the man-made coastal bank at the site are limited to storm damage prevention and flood control. The seawater project will improve the capacity of land subject to coastal storm flowage and coastal bank to perform these functions because the bulkhead will be raised to better prevent flooding. The raised pier and bulkhead will also reduce wave energy on the site, and areas landward or north of the site will improve storm damage prevention for those areas as well. Additionally, although the site does not currently provide the function of water pollution control, the proposed stormwater management system will enhance that resource's ability to provide that function. Additionally, the project does not require alteration of vegetated areas within the V zone, which is entirely encapsulated by impervious surfaces and does not serve as a sediment source. In addition, the project does not impact any areas of dune or beach. In short, because the seawater project does not adversely destroy or impair the function of land subject to coastal storm flowage at the site, the proposed new waterfront building can be permitted within the Falmouth V zone. Therefore, a variance from that section 10.384D is not necessary. So that brings the commission up to speed on everything that's been submitted up to date, and I think sets the stage for a good, lively discussion. So at this point, I'd like to turn it back to Chairman Matthews, and we'll proceed with this hearing.
Thank you, sir. For the moment, Jack, you can stop sharing, but you'll probably be asked to bring it back up. Thank you. All right. Is there anybody else on your team that would like to speak before we turn it over to staff and commission?
I think we're ready to proceed, Mr. Chairman. We'd like to try to be as efficient with your time as possible tonight.
And we appreciate that. All right, Jen, do you want to start?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, you may want to hear from Trey from Rhythm from Applied Coastal that he did the review on behalf of the commission.
Okay, Trey, you're up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Trey Ruthven from Applied Coastal Research and Engineering here on behalf of the commission. I just wanted to quickly address Jack's presentation relative to the variance request for land subject to coastal storm flowage. Part of the precursor for that is that you're not allowed to impair, destroy the function of a landform or adjacent wetland resource. The one issue I still have is with the pushing of the bulkhead seaward, we're actually impacting land under the ocean. So once we're impacting land under the ocean under 1038-4D, it prohibits the use of new structures, which this would qualify as foundations with the filling or the fill within the bulkheads. Those are foundations. We're actually extending the impervious area for paving, and we're constructing brand new coastal engineering structures relative to the bulkheads that are going in place. So I'm not sure we've actually qualified that we don't need that variance as of yet.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to respond to Mr. Ruthven's comment, I'm happy to do that now, or however you'd like to proceed.
Are you all set for the moment?
For the moment, the other issues we might want to talk about are, the eelgrass, but we can get to that. It might just be easier to deal with these as a kind of a topical issue, just so it doesn't get confusing.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Jack.
So if I can just respond to that initial comment, let me remind the commission and Mr. Ruthven that the variance we're requesting is not for the bulkhead construction. The variance we are requesting is specifically for the siting of the structure within the presumptive Falmouth V zone. So we need to focus on that aspect of the project. That is not something, we can't conflate these two parts of the project. We are looking for the variance that applies to the structure. We're not requesting a variance for that dock.
It's the bulkhead, so you're still building within the V zone and filling within the V zone, which is prohibited.
All right. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think the staff, obviously, we're going to rely heavily on your consultant's comments. And we recommend to the commission that you listen to the consultants that you hired comments. I think we did our revised staff comments. Jack, our first staff comment relates to that issue that we were having with the National Flood Insurance Program regulations. So is Dwight the gentleman that has to make that, I'd like to stated on the record that, the engineers of your project are going to certify that the project is in compliance with all the FEMA's requirements and that the fill in the velocity zone is not for the structural support of the building. Is anybody prepared to make that statement?
The project engineers are certainly willing, already have in fact provided the certification in the materials that we submitted back on November 24th regarding the structural fill. The other comment you were looking for is regard to the
just that compliance with all of FEMA's regulations. That was something that the county had requested that be stated on record in our public hearing.
Right. Well, what I can say is that the new waterfront building is located outside of the FEMA map VE zone. The architectural plans are completed through the schematic design phase and will be moving into the design development phase. The design is being advanced to meet all applicable National Flood Insurance Program standards for building in the AE zone. And final architectural plans will be reviewed by the building department, and compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program standards will be conferred by the issuance of the building permit. We will document compliance with the standard by submitting the final architectural plans and building permit to the Falmouth Conservation Commission before construction of the new waterfront building begins. So that was all information that was submitted to you as part of our package.
No, I understand that. It was just something the county had, again, recommended be stated on record. So appreciate that. But a quick question, Jack. The building itself, is the building on piles?
Are you talking about the existing buildings or the new waterfront?
No, the new waterfront building. Is the new waterfront building going to be built on piles?
They're being built on PIFs, so essentially piles. It's not, but it is at grade, right? It's not elevated on piles. These are pressure injected footings. They're essentially piles that will go down about 30 feet to provide a solid foundation.
Okay. I think one of the biggest concerns that the town has is the impact on our community rating system. And as the commission knows, the community rating system is the program of the National Flood Insurance Program that kind of offers residents a discount on their flood insurance. One of the ways that the discount is determined is that FEMA will come down, conduct a site visit through the building records, and assign the town a number of points or credits. And those points and credits equal to a certain percentage off of flood insurance. One of the biggest, one of the good things that Falmouth had to its advantage was the 25-foot offset to the V zone and your pretty much strict compliance with the regulations regarding that 25-foot offset. So as you know, whether you issue a variance now or not a variance, you know, staff always has to recommend that you follow your regulations. And, you know, any deviation from 10.38 could result, I'm not saying it is going to result, but could result in a reduction of credits or points. I don't precisely know what they're called. So that Falmouth residents might not receive the full discount that they may be eligible for, you know, if we're not keeping with our regulations. That 25-foot offset is very unique to Falmouth, and you know, it is something that was looked favorably on. What that reduction or what that means, again, with the CRS, I can't quantify that for you. We just don't know. But it's something that's been pointed out to us. As far as you'll have to evaluate the Eelgrass mitigation plan, and should probably have a conversation about that. We do recommend following DMF's comments, and include language in the order of conditions that the final Eelgrass monitoring plan be completed with DMF coordination, and the time of year restrictions. And the only other thing we had in our revised staff reports, Jack, there had been a question in the original staff report regarding the dredging footprint.
Oh, right.
Limits, and you kind of said that there was no figure G1 in your notice of intent application. And there was. I saw it today. And I think it's named figure 1, and then G1's in the title block. So that's what we were looking at.
Right, and I apologize for that. The number, it's such a massive document that the letter number designations get a little bit confusing. But I did locate G1 as well this afternoon, and if I can share my screen again, I can explain what the issue is. And
okay, that would be great. Thank you, Jack.
Sure. So here is figure G1 from the draft Eelgrass avoidance and protection plan. This is the area that of dredging in the West Bank is. I hope you can see my cursor, but it's right here at the bow of the Atlantis. And next slide kind of zooms in on that area. So the dark gray shaded region is showing the limits of dredging within the dredge limits established by the existing Chapter 91 license. Now those dredge limits are controlled laterally by that red line that you see, those two arcs, which I'll trace here. Yep. And also to a certain depth, 22 feet, which is the area here, the 22-foot contour. So we can, right now, the Chapter 91 license allows dredging of the material that is slumped in this area only. However, who we would like to go deeper here to 24 feet. And in order to do that, they need to, I don't know, I got to move my window for the Zoom meeting over here. But this zoom in over here shows that the proposed dredge limits do extend out beyond the currently allowed dredge limits. So that'll be something that'll be addressed as part of the new Chapter 91 license that the project will be working to secure. Does that clarify things, Jen?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, so you're doing a mix of improvement and maintenance dredging, or do you consider this all improvement dredging?
I think it's really a moot point. We are definitely expanding the dredging over what's currently licensed, so I would consider it all really for the purposes of licensing. This is all improvement dredging.
Improvement dredging. Okay. Thank you. I think that's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Trey, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to add to Jen's comments. Jack, the applicant's focusing on the building being the V zone, but also the construction of the bulkheads and filling the V zone is prohibited. Fill is allowed in a V zone under FEMA technical bulletin number 5, but there's a clear definition of what that says, and I can read it to you really quickly. It'll take only a second. It says fill placed in a V zone should be similar to the natural soils in the area. In many coastal areas, natural soils are clean sand or sandy soils free of large quantities of clay, silt, or organic material. Non-structural fill should not contain large rocks or debris. If the fill is similar to and compatible with natural soils, there is no need to require the designers to investigate or certify whether fill has a tendency for excessive natural compaction. And the one issue that I go back to with this is if we look at project sheet S303 that was submitted as part of this packet, they're showing that their fill is concrete. That's not natural material. So hence that is actually prohibited by the NFIP. So I still think we have an issue with that relative to, that variance request.
Jen, would you explain or let the commissioners know of your recent communication with CRS coordinator Shannon Hulst?
Yes, I sent you all Shannon's email. From yesterday, and let me find it.
I have it up if you want me to read it, Jen.
That's fine. I can read it. And she goes, "Hi, I've just concluded a call with the folks from FEMA and DCR. 2 items to know. Fill in the V zone. This part of the project can proceed as planned as long as the engineer is willing to sign off on the conditions outlined in Technical Bulletin 5, including the fact that there are no nearby buildings that will be negatively impacted by fill. Based on our previous conversations, this has already been incorporated into the design, and I will let the Conservation Commission know that Wednesday's night's hearing no longer needs to be held up on the basis of that question. And then flood-proofing mechanisms, the aquafence and other flood-proofing mechanisms for windows, doors, and openings must be structurally attached to the building in order to meet FEMA's flood-proofing requirements. Deployed on its own with no attachment to the building, aquafence does not meet these requirements. Please let me know if you'd like to discuss this now or in the future. It is unlikely to affect Conservation Commission hearing on Wednesday night, as it is a building permit issue."
And what my point is that according to Technical Bulletin number 5, is that the fill should be compatible with existing sediments, so it should be natural sand, things like that, and it doesn't meet that requirement. What they're proposing is concrete, which is not a natural material. It does allow for a concrete layer for parking and things like that, but not concrete fill. So currently we are not in compliance with technical bulletin number 5.
All right, I see Leslie Fields has her hand up, figuratively speaking.
I wanted to get back to one of the comments that was said before that for FWR 10.384D, that we need a variance in order to do the repairs to the bulkhead. And I would argue that that's not true, because these regulations allow expansions of coastal engineering structures and repair of structures, so long as they don't impair the function of that resource or have an adverse effect on the adjacent wetland resources. And I would argue that repairing that bulkhead improves the function of that bulkhead to be able to provide storm damage protection and flood control. And I would also state that the repairs to that bulkhead are simply its sheeting going in front of the existing bulkhead area. There will be minor intrusion into land under the ocean, but I would argue that anytime someone in the town of Falmouth repairs a bulkhead in the V zone, most often they're going seaward and putting that sheeting in front of it. No, Jen's saying no.
No, I mean, I've seen it both ways, Leslie. A lot of times we require them to put it behind the bulkhead to prevent that kind of incremental encroachment into land under ocean. But I can't say I've never seen it done.
Yeah.
But in the past couple of years, we've really pushed everybody to do it behind.
Yep. In terms of impairing the function, I would argue that repair of that bulkhead is not impairing the function at all. In fact, it's improving it. And so from that perspective, I think we don't need a variance for that work.
May I comment, Jen, or Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I agree that if the bulkhead was being repaired, however, this is a brand new bulkhead, it's moving 5 feet seaward from its current place. It'll all be a brand new bulkhead. If we were actually replacing the bulkhead in kind at its existing location and having the tiebacks within the existing filled tidelands, I would agree. But the issue with extending this bulkhead 5 feet seaward is that we are actually further encroaching on the 50-foot buffer to eelgrass. And so not only are we impairing the function of land under the ocean, but we're also impairing the function of the eelgrass, which is prohibited. So in both these cases, we are directly impacting adjacent resource areas.
Leslie, anything else?
I don't have anything right now. Thank you.
We'll come back around to everybody. All right, Jen, anything else?
No, right now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'm going to open up to some commissioner comments and questions. Courtney, we'll start with you.
I don't have anything right now, but I may want to come back to it.
Okay. Jen?
One thing, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry about this. Can I have Jack Vaccaro, can you, since we need to address the eelgrass issue, can you briefly go over what your eelgrass mitigation plan was, just to refresh the commission's memory?
Sure. Let me.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Since you are asking for that variance, we will need to address that. So it would be nice to just refresh the commission's memory of what the mitigation plan was.
Of course. Give me a moment to find the correct slides. While I'm looking for the slides here, I'll just say that we did put a fair amount of effort into developing an eelgrass avoidance and protection plan with the Division of Marine Fisheries and EPA, and also spent some time talking with the Falmouth Harbor Master and the conservation agent or conservation administrator about what we had in mind for a mitigation plan. I'm having some difficulty finding at the moment the slides for the Eelgrass program. So if you can just bear with me just a moment and let's see.
How about kind of an overview, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, it's okay.
How are you going to protect the eelgrass? And then what are you proposing for mitigation? I don't really think they need to see the slideshow on the mitigation again, but just kind of refresh their memories what you were going to do to mitigate for what is going to be inevitably some impacts to that eelgrass.
Yeah, I would like to just show the slides though anyhow.
Okay, that's fine.
So here we go. I hope you can see this. Oh dear. Okay, so to refresh everyone's memory, we do have two areas of eelgrass, one here in the entrance channel to Eel Pond, another in this corner of the site, the northwest corner, behind the MBL building, community building, or the MBL building. As I said, we did get together with the DMF and EPA to develop some standards and some procedures for protecting the eelgrass. We are, sorry. You know what? I'm not going to be able to find it here, folks. I do apologize. But the main tenets of the plan are that we are going to work closely with the contractors to make sure that we establish areas, markers on the water surface so that we know exactly where the limits of the eelgrass are. There'll be monitoring or additional surveys for eelgrass before the contractors even arrive on the site, so we get the most recent extent of the eelgrass known, marking those areas with buoys, keeping the contractors from anchoring in those areas or putting down spuds. There will be pre and post construction monitoring of these areas, again, surveys to determine exactly how much eelgrass impact occurs as a result of the project construction. And once that amount is known, we can adjust the mitigation, the actual compensation for the impact, which is being proposed as a proactive program whereby moorings that are in areas of eelgrass in Great Harbor that are using traditional tackle would be selected and on a volunteer basis, and that tackle would be replaced with conservation moorings so that we could provide 3-to-1 replication or mitigation compensation for the actual eelgrass impact that occurs. So it's a program that DMF has bought into. We think that the project is likely to, of course, the project will have some impact to eelgrass. It's a case where we have eelgrass growing right up alongside the bulkhead in some areas, and so it's going to be, a reasonable. It is a reasonable assumption that there is going to be some impact to eelgrass. We estimate that it could be 1,000 square feet of eelgrass impact, and like I said, Hui is prepared to proactively mitigate for that impact. So that is the plan that's in place. The draft plan has been submitted. It was part of the package that was the original notice of intent application. And it is a draft plan. It will be undergoing further review with the EPA as part of the core permitting. It'll certainly be reviewed further by DMF as part of the Chapter 91 water quality cert permitting. So there's going to be another round of edits almost certainly, but so far we've gotten good signals from DMF that the program that's being proposed is adequate for the expected impact to eelgrass. Apologies again for my fumbling with my slides here, but I'm not all that great with PowerPoint in all honesty. So.
No worries, Jack. I know you're trying to keep it concise. I just wanted to refresh the commission's memory on the eelgrass part, because again, it is another variance that you are requesting. One quick thing on that. You said 3 to 1. So you would let's use your 1,000 square foot number. You know, let's just use that hypothetically. That's what's impacted. How many, you know, eco moorings does that translate to?
I think the initial plan was to convert. We had talked about I don't want to throw out a number that's incorrect, because I don't want to give you the wrong impression.
It's in your Eelgrass. Is it in your avoidance mitigation plan?
Yes, and the number of, we had actually very good data. A similar program was undertaken in West Falmouth Harbor, and there was a set amount of eelgrass that was restored on average by conversion of moorings in West Falmouth Harbor. And we used that number to determine the number of moorings that would be required to provide 3,000 square feet of compensation.
Okay, and you did say that's in your plan. I just don't remember that number off the top of my head, so that's fine. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I just thought it was important to refresh the board's memory on the eelgrass.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Courtney, you want another go at it?
I just want to make a general comment. This obviously is a huge project. It's very complex. It's a redevelopment of a major site in an area that is highly developed as it is right now. As everyone is aware, we're facing challenges with climate change, and so any project like this is going to require a kind of a balancing act. And I'm kind of a big picture person. It's hard for me to get my head around every single detail and worry about every piece of eelgrass and every little bit of sediment and all of that, although those are very, very, very important issues. But I think we as a commission need to look at the overall impact of this project and what are the pluses and minuses, and hopefully the pluses, which I think, given the amount of time and effort that have gone into it on the part of the applicants, that the pluses outweigh any of the minuses looking down the road. I mean, that's how I see this, and we've got a lot of deliberation to do.
Yes, we do. All right. Mr. O'Brien.
I guess I would very much like to second Court's remarks, but I also have to think of the impacts that we would be allowing by granting what are clear exceptions to our rules. And would we be placed in an awkward situation in enforcing those rules from now on? So, court's right. It's going to be a balancing act, but we have to balance fairly wrong word. We have to do our best to balance it, keeping both sides of the scale in mind. Thank you.
Pat?
I just want to say a little bit further in line with what Kevin just noted. We have some very specific requirements in our regulations. And one of the hallmarks of our regulations is that everybody's treated equally. The variance provisions in our regulations state that they are intended to be granted only in rare and unusual circumstances. And one of the requirements that I'm struggling with in terms of granting either variance in this instance is the hardship requirement and the requirement that the applicant demonstrate that they are suffering a hardship as a and that hardship relates to the property, the uniqueness of the property taken in its totality. The application does talk about they're stating that the hardship relates to the uses in the structures, and they've amended that to say the shape of the property. I just want to discuss that further with the commissioners and perhaps ask the applicant to be a little bit more creative in terms of finding a hardship related to the property itself. I do know, I saw the response from the applicant that they feel that we are following Chapter 40A, the zoning act, for this language of hardship. That's not the case explicitly, because the 40A explicitly states that structures are included in that analysis. Our regulations do not include structures. And my last comment is that we've talked many times in the past about the slippery slope that we're creating when we make exceptions for a project that we want to support, but we are making exceptions or allowances that we haven't made in the past. Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Cox.
Mute myself. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Eliza Cox. I'm an attorney at Nutter, McLennan and Fish in Hyannis on behalf of Hui. And I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation and try to respond to Commissioner Harris's comments. I understand from the comments that were just stated and also the ones that were provided to us previously in writing, which we appreciate having received those in advance, that there's this concern whether or not your definition of hardship applies to the land and only the land, or to the property as a whole, including the uses of the structures. And I understand Commissioner Harris's interpretation, which she just referred to. When we first saw this comment in writing, I asked one of my colleagues to look at case law to see if there's any guidance in Falmouth regarding how you've interpreted the term property in your hardship definition. And although we found several cases, variance cases, none of them dealt specifically with this question, whether reference in your definition to the term hardship, to the term property refers to just the land or the land and structures. So in reviewing your regulations, I noticed that the regulations use the term land 964 times. And yet they only use the term property 34 times, including 3 times within the definition of hardship. Thus, generally speaking, your regulations use the term land rather than property. And to me, that suggests that the term and the use of the word property in the definition of hardship was purposeful. If the drafters of your regulations had intended the commission to only consider land in the hardship context, then arguably, I think they would have used that word land in the definition, since they use that dominantly in your regulations. But they didn't. They didn't do that here. They used the term property. Generally, too, I would suggest that the term property is broader in scope than the word land. Land, in my mind, typically refers to the Earth's surface, and property, in my mind, generally includes land and any improvements that are located on the land. It's a broader term. Further, when I look at the definition in the regulations, it seems to me that the definition was intended to interpret the word property broadly, because it also qualifies that term by saying property in its totality. So here, the way I read it, it would suggest that the commission is required to consider the whole or the sum of the property, which to me would also necessarily include any structures or improvements. And that's how we drafted the initial addendum to the NOI, as Commissioner Harris indicated. That said, I think also here we can demonstrate that the land as a component of the property is unique. The shape and the configuration of the land, including the manner in which the landform extends out into Great Harbor past the nearby eelgrass beds, is unique in comparison to abutting properties and other nearby properties. In so doing and expanding the landform in that way, it uniquely provides access to the ocean and the marine environment, and importantly for Hui, more proximate access to deep water. And this deep water access is a critical, unique component of this property, and it's very important to Hui's operation and mission, both in terms of allowing Hui to have its large ocean-going ships berth at the port, and also for the testing of Hui's unmanned submersibles. I would even indicate that your town's peer reviewer, in citing the position of the bulkhead, noted in his comments as it relates to the requested variance that, and I quote, obtaining an offset of 50 feet here from the eelgrass, is what he was talking about, is not feasible. Again, this shows how unique this site is. In addition, I would also suggest that the land and its location in the harbor is unique. It provides protection for vessel berthing and direct access to the Woods Hole passage channel for Hui's ocean-going ships. Again, by the nature of extending into further the landform out into the harbor as compared to nearby properties. And that these unique physical characteristics, in addition to, I think that the structural characteristics that exist also qualify, all show what an unusual and unique property this is. And while I know the language of your regulations that suggest variances are to be sparingly granted, I think this is a highly unique situation where it would be appropriate for the board to consider granting the variances that we've requested.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to continue with commissioner comments. Peter?
Yes, I have to thank Trey for being like a bulldog, going through all the complex requirements and rules and so forth, and highlighting to the committee what he thinks is not right. And I think it was a tremendous advantage to have Trey go through all the documents and ferret out what the things that we should be examining closely. Also, I think the TMF has a big background, an excellent background in considering the effects on the environment. And I'm inclined to go with DMF's recommendations. That's it.
Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in the Courtney camp. I try to look at the big picture and evaluate the situation. I listen to everybody's comments and admire their expertise. This is a significant project for the town of Falmouth, and I think we all know that. And whether another property could use this as an example in future cases is what sits in my mind. I appreciate Commissioner Harris's comments and all of you, but that's what I need to try to think about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Leslie? Leslie Fields, you had your hand up?
Yeah.
No, okay. I just wanted to point out to the commission that, we're only asking for the one variance. So by the documentation that was submitted last week, we have withdrawn the variance request from 10.384D because we feel like we've demonstrated that this project meets the performance standards within that part of your regulation. If we need to do something to evaluate impacts to land under the ocean because of the pier reconstruction based on Trey's comments, we can take a look at that. But, aside from that, we feel like the project definitely meets performance standards. And so we've withdrawn that request for a variance. I want to make sure the commission understands that. We just got one variance request before the commission regarding impacts to eelgrass. Epsilon, the team has been working really hard with DMF to come up with that plan for mitigation. We at Woods Hole Group have done a couple of projects with potential adverse impacts to eelgrass, and we've used that same elastic mooring or echo mooring designed to mitigate for impacts to eelgrass, and it's worked really well over in Lake Tajmu in the vineyard. So I just wanted to, provide the information that we've had some experience with that form of mitigation. It's worked really well. So I just want to leave you with those thoughts.
Thank you. Trey?
Just a quick comment on the eelgrass variance. I agree with a lot of what Eliza said, is that, it is a unique site and actually getting a 50-foot offset would be very difficult. However, at the same time, this is Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. I mean, their whole task is to preserve, understand, educate all on these ocean resources. And so, while I see they're moving their bulkheads closer to eelgrass, in some instances within 2 feet, that does not suggest to me that they're actually minimizing the impact as much as possible with the site conditions they have. If that was the case, they would be sticking within their existing footprint. As DMF says about eelgrass beds provide one of the most productive habitats for numerous marine species. Reading that, suggests to me that, this is a very valuable resource, and every measure that can be taken by not actually further extending into the water, close these eel beds, would be important for a project of this magnitude, especially by an institute that's in focus is protecting the oceans. DMF also asked that the turbidity impacts have a 25-foot setback within the E&F certificate. The one thing I've noticed is that with a lot of these bulkheads within just a few feet of the eelgrass beds, the 25-foot offset wouldn't be possible. I don't think it'd be possible even if we stuck within the existing footprint of the structure, but those offsets would be actually larger than they currently are proposed. So I agree that the site is unique. 50 feet might be practically impossible without actually moving landward or some other configuration, but the existing footprint could be preserved and the encroachment on the eelgrass could be prevented.
Thank you. Courtney?
Yeah, I just, in my big picture comments, I certainly didn't want them to be construed that I wanted to give away the farm. I think there's going to be a real tough balancing act, and we're going to have to make some decisions. And if we have to make decisions, we have to have findings that are defensible, because clearly we can't. I understand the concerns that if we were to grant a variance, and we're very loath to grant variances. In my time on the commission, I can only think of maybe 1 or 2 cases in 13 or 14 or 15 years I've been on the commission where we've granted variances. They're not something that gets done lightly. And this is going to be the tough part of our deliberations as to how to balance all of these things. And if we decide that we're going to grant variances, we better damn well have findings that can hold up. That's my comment.
Thank you.
We're gonna have fun with this one.
Jack, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. On the topic of eelgrass, it is at this point, the only variance request that we're seeking is to allow construction within 50 feet of eelgrass. We all know that. It's a unique circumstance. We have eelgrass that currently at the eel pond entrance channel is growing within a few feet of the existing bulkhead. I want to point out to the commission that the proposed bulkhead reconfiguration, yes, we are getting slightly closer in one area, one very small area. We're moving from what is now currently, about 5 feet off of the edge of the eelgrass to about 2 feet off in one tight location. But if you look at the amount of eelgrass in that area that's within 25 feet of the reconfigured bulkhead, we're actually reducing the amount of eelgrass within that distance. We're moving from what is currently 1,185 square feet of eelgrass within 25 feet of the bulkhead to 1,115 square feet. So it's not fair to, I think, just consider the minimum distance that the new dock is, or the new bulkhead is in relation to the old. You need to consider how much area of the eelgrass as a whole is within, say, 25 feet of that base. And then I also just wanted to point out, Jen, that I did find the numbers from the Eelgrass Avoidance and Protection Plan. The West Falmouth project, what DMF found there was that the average amount of eelgrass habitat that's affected by mooring scars is 82 square meters per mooring, 882 square feet. Our mitigation program is based on being able to restore 50% of the habitat at each of these scars. So roughly 440 square feet of eelgrass habitat for each mooring conversion. And that works out to about 8, rounding up 8 moorings that would have to be converted to provide 3,000 square feet of compensation for eelgrass impact.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other comments, questions for the moment? All right, Jen, let's open up to public chat, please.
I have one attendee. Jack, your hand's still raised. Did you want to say something else?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me lower.
No, it's okay. I'm going to promote Dave Martin and Catherine Bumpus as panelists who both have their hands raised. Oh, looks like I didn't do Catherine. Hang on. All right, Dave. I just promoted Dave Martin. He had his hand raised, and then Catherine's coming in and she had her hand raised.
Okay, Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Don't call me sir, I work for a living.
Yes,
all right, you have comments, please be concise.
I do. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here as a trustee of the Woods Hole Community Association. We own a building that directly abuts this project on the Eel Pond Channel side of the project. Behind our building, adjoining our property and adjoining this project is about 60 feet of coastal beach and intertidal zone. I haven't been able to find that documented anywhere in the plans or application. We're concerned about the impact of that coastal beach. Proposed bulkhead will be installed in the coastal beach. What we'd like to see is that the coastal beach is identified, documented, and protected. And actually, in its present condition, it's got a lot of debris on it, hui-related debris. I think there's some opportunity here to enhance that coastal beach. And I believe, I'm not looking at the plan presently, but I believe that coastal beach is in close proximity to some of the area that Hui is proposing for public space. So I'm seeing a lot of opportunities here to, with a small effort, to make some major improvements. And I certainly don't want to see this project go forward without at least acknowledging that important resource area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Is Catherine in?
I am.
Oh, there she is. Yep.
You're up again.
How are
Please be
you all this
concise.
evening? Yes, thank you all for the time and energy you've put into this. And I know it's been a lot of work, and I appreciate your very serious review of it. I appreciate the commissioner's comments on how this is a big project, and this is a big project for Falmouth, and it is different than, in many ways, than what you often review. But it does and will set precedents depending on what happens with it. The extension of taking more land under the ocean, the expansion, the incremental expansion into the water, which Jen noted you really haven't done in other locations, I think is quite significant. I think there are also many other places in Falmouth where there are docks located very close to eelgrass beds, and you work hard to minimize those impacts. And while the focus and discussion this evening was mostly on those two issues, there are a myriad of other issues that I hope the commission will look very closily at in the issuing the order of conditions for this, because there are certainly construction issues and silt fence and monitoring and lots of other details that will be a big undertaking, because this will be a big project with a big contractor who will push back on a lot of things. And so we hope that HUI, as an environmental organization, will try to be the best environmental steward that they can of our local area. There's also the insurance concern for community-wide is startling for those of us who pay flood insurance. We would like our insurance rates to be as low as possible. So minimizing whatever changes come about, because Falmouth has done a good job of keeping regulations in place that will keep our rates low, is important community-wide. So those are a couple of comments, and I hope that maybe we'll have an opportunity for other written comments as the hearing continues.
Thank you, Catherine. Leslie?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Dave to clarify where this beach is. I'm looking at Google Earth. Is it right behind the community hall?
Yes.
Yes, Leslie, it's right behind the community hall. There's a sort of an L-shaped retaining wall behind the hall that then turns and runs seaward along the Hui property. And in that corner is intertidal zone and coastal beach. It's about 60 feet long along the Hui property at low tide today, at any rate, and 30 feet at the wall behind the community hall. it's presently got moorings and various concrete debris stored on it, but
Yeah, I think I see it. So is that Hui property or is that town property? Does anybody?
that's one of the problems we've had throughout the process. We haven't had the benefit of a proper site plan for this project that demonstrates where lot lines are and ownership is. With all respect to the applicants, the plan that we've been reviewing to date is, I would characterize it more as an illustration than a site plan. And you're very familiar with what a typical survey or engineered site plan looks like, and it clarifies those kind of questions. I believe the joining property, well, no, I shouldn't say that. As a result, we don't know whose property that is.
Okay, so that's something we'll have to look into. Okay, and just,
And I would like to see measures taken to protect that coastal beach and enhance it if possible. It's a real jewel in an otherwise very heavily industrialized area. It could be easily protected.
Jen?
Mr. Chairman, if I can I share my screen and see if I can't point out where this little, I think Dave is talking about? I think I have it up on my GIS. And Dave,
Sure.
Leslie, you can see if this is where you think it is. Is this it, Dave?
I think that is it, yeah.
Dave, is that
Yes.
where you're talking about?
That's it.
Okay.
The whole triangle.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to clarify for the commission and for Leslie where you thought, where you were talking about.
All right, thank you.
At least I saw some debris, so I was like, that's gotta be it.
Jack, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to comment on that area. You know, it's with all due respect to Mr. Martin, it from 1,000 feet, it sure doesn't look like much of a jewel to me. But we can take a look at that area and determine whether or not it's a coastal beach. It may in fact just be land subject to tidal action. But we can certainly have a look at that area.
Still begs the question about what the stuff is on it, the debris.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jen, is there anything else, any other public chat, comments, questions?
Catherine has her hand raised.
Sorry,
To
Catherine?
David's point and that end, a survey or a plan, I have asked Jennifer for this and it hasn't been submitted apparently, showing the lot lines would be very helpful for us for review, and I think is pretty much a threshold for commission review for other projects. So I'm surprised that it isn't part of what's been included in the submission.
All right, so Jack, I'm thinking that's on you. We need to determine the lot lines ownership. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Jen, is there anybody else in with questions?
Leslie Ann McGee from Hui has her
Yeah,
hand
I'm
raised.
asking you if there's any more public comments,
Oh, I apologize. Doesn't appear to be.
and I'm not ignoring you, Leslie. Okay. I just want to make sure we're covered there because I want everybody to have the opportunity. Okay, Leslie Ann McGee, you're up.
Yep, thanks. Appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify that we actually do have a survey and we're prepared to show it tonight if you need to.
Does it show the area in question?
Yes.
Would you please go ahead and share that?
Yeah, if you can just give me a minute, I have to pull it up.
Okay.
One question, Leslie Ann, has it been submitted with because can you submit that to us, please?
Yes, we have submitted a survey to you as part of the NOI process, correct, Jack? It's part of the package, but we have an updated or more detailed survey for the purposes of site plan review. So that's why we
Perfect.
have an updated one, which would clearly be filed during our site plan review process, but I have it available if you want to take a look at that area.
Thank you.
Let me just share my screen here if this will work.
There it is.
So, sorry, I'm fighting with a number of windows here. So this is the Hui property line. Here, so the area amongst here and the pier, which is not shown on aerial, is part of town property.
So to be clear, are you saying that that parcel in question is under the ownership of Hui?
No, I'm saying that the area that they're showing right here, I believe,
Oh, I'm
is
sorry.
property of the town.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And as we go through site plan review, we do have improvements to this area to make it pervious area. We'll be working with the town to make some improvements on this whole area, which I would assume if the town is interested, will include improvements to the area that Mr. Martin has referenced. So.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any. And I'm going to ask again, Jen, is there anything in the public part? Please.
Dwight Dunk is here. I just noticed him. I'm just going to promote him up in case he has anything to add, Jack, since he's part of your project team. But no, Mr. Chairman, there's no other hands raised or anything in the chat.
Okay.
Dwight, if you do have something to contribute at this point, I'm not sure how much you've been hearing when you joined the meeting, but if there's something you'd like to contribute at this point, just raise your hand.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. All right. All right, Jack, what are we looking at? What are you thinking?
Well, as I understand it, we've been asked to provide the survey drawing that that Leslie Ann just put on the screen for everyone to view. We'll get that formally made part of the record. Were there other items that the Conservation Commission was wanting us to provide?
Way, Jack and Leslie, if you could look at that bulkhead issue and see if there's any way to minimize that encroachment. I think that would be very helpful for the commission.
If we can do that.
All right, anything else? Okay. Jack, I think we'll look, Leslie.
I just wanted to clarify something that Jen said early on, that we needed to state on the record about this structural fill in the V zone. We have it documented in written form. Do you need something besides that?
Who would be the engineer certifying that? Is that Dwight or is it on your team, Leslie?
No, neither one of our teams. Is it Jeff or is it?
It's Moffett and Nickel, our engineer.
Okay. I mean, the county recommended having it be stated on record by that the engineers would certify that. So I'm assuming if the project team states it, then that's sufficient.
Okay, and it is in that documentation that you.
Yep, no, I know.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Jen, may I add a request to that? I would like, if they're certifying that they actually specify what the fill material is, because the plans currently show concrete, which would make that structural fill.
Okay. Can that be done, Leslie? Fields?
Yeah, it is, and some of it is concrete, but the engineers have certified that even though it's concrete, it's not structural fill because it's not supporting the building.
But then they need to address how that actually can meets FEMA technical bulletin 5, which actually says it should not be, it should be material that would be found naturally on the site, which concrete is not natural.
You know, they can address it.
All right. Jack, do you have a formal request for us?
We'd like to continue the hearing to the next available date.
And here comes the sticky part. Again, I'm just trying to.
It seems like potentially this next meeting could be fairly brief. And I would hope that since this process has been going on now for several months, that the commission could make an accommodation to get us in sometime in the next, by mid-January.
I'm going to leave it up to the commission. You have 5 new notices on the 5th and 4 continued. So you actually have 5 continued, but I've been told tonight one's going to be continued to the 12th. Right now, you only have 4 continueds on the 12th, but we know people are itching. So it's going to be up to the commission, or it's the 19th. Up to you guys.
Jack, is there any reason you can't do the 19th?
The only reason really is that there's a ripple effect here. This is the leading edge of our permitting effort, and you know, we've been very patient and letting this process play itself out. But there comes a point where it does start to affect the project schedule. I know a week isn't a lot, but if it just and if it does turn out that it's January 19th is the best you can do, then we'll live with that. But we are feeling that it would be certainly helpful to get this wrapped up as soon as possible.
All right, so if you guys can get all your information in that we're looking for.
Yes.
Well, Jen, let's throw it on the 12th.
What was that, Mr. Chairman?
Put it on the 12th, please.
Oh, sure. That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At the request of the applicant, I move that we continue this hearing until the 12th of January 2022.
Second, Patton.
Then on the 12th, let's just try all of us just to be quick. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table to continue this until January 12th. If there's nothing further, I'm calling for the vote. All right, Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until January 12th. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
The next two have been continued. So that brings us to request to amend an existing order of conditions. First up is Stephen Parker, 12 Bridge Street, Falmouth, Mass. Request to amend the order of conditions for Mass DEP number 25-4618 to allow for vista pruning in according with FWR 10.1810B and to manage invasive vegetation. And before we go any further, can you bring back Maury and Betsy?
Maury's already in. She's just silent. Betsy, I'm just promoting back in. And which one did you announce? Parker?
Yes.
All right, so that's Mike and Teresa. So I'm bringing in Mike Verselli. At least I thought it was. And bringing in Teresa Sprague.
Hello, Teresa. Hello, Mike.
Oh, well,
Hello,
you,
Mr.
I don't know
Chairman.
how to do it.
Back again, members of the commission. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I
Oh, thank
represent the applicant,
Thank you.
along with Teresa. I'm going to briefly share my screen with your permission, and then I'm going to just outline in general the project, and then I'm going to turn it over to Teresa for the specifics.
Thank you.
The property in question is number 12 Bridge Street, which received an order of conditions to construct a single-family dwelling. The plan before you shows that house. It shows the wetland resources, which include land under the ocean, land subject to tidal action, a band of salt marsh, a low-profile coastal bank. All the associated no disturbance zone A's and outer buffer zone B's are on the plan. And as is your typical procedure, Vista window applications usually come as amendments to orders once house construction has commenced, and you get a better sense of where the Vista window should be, which is why we're here tonight. So this plan shows where a 25-foot wide Vista window is proposed. It also shows some other activities associated with work in the buffer, including invasives management and a path. So my plan shows these in general, and the specifics are on the plan by Blue Flax Design. And I'm going to relinquish my screen and turn it over to Teresa.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everybody. Teresa Sprague with Blue Flax Design. With your permission, may I share my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe you're all looking at the Blue Flax plan for 12 Bridge Street, the Parker property. On behalf of the property owners, we're here to present this plan. This plan contains 4 components. As Mike pointed out, the main component is the proposal of a 25-foot wide Vista corridor, as well as a proposed pathway leading from the upland portions of the property or the residence to allow access to the waterfront area, a path no more than 4 feet wide that's proposed to be located within the proposed Vista corridor. And then we're proposing some minor selective invasive species management, as well as for the purposes of appropriately managing the Vista corridor, managing or relocating some of the previously proposed and approved Arrowwood viburnum that was proposed along the edge of the
resource area, to delineate that resource area from the upland portions and to replace that with a portion of split rail fence. So the proposed Vista corridor is proposed to be managed per Falmouth Wetlands Regulations 10.18 10B. So we're proposing to manage that Vista corridor, 25-foot wide Vista corridor, no more than 10% of tree canopy to be thinned. There's a number of oak trees located throughout this area. We're proposing to remove some of the sapling size oaks within this area, not all of them, but thinning those within the view corridor. Of course, the Falmouth Wetlands Regulations Vista corridor guidelines allow for shrubs to be pruned down to 5 feet above existing grade. The understory in this area mainly consists of some bayberry, some inkberry holly, as well as the typical oak pitch pine understory species, including black huckleberry, low bush blueberry, Gaultheria procumbens, and a healthy duff layer on the ground. So management as far as pruning shrubs within the Vista corridor down to 5 feet is not really necessary. However, it's part of the Vista management regulations. So we're including that. This is mainly about managing and thinning some oak canopy to allow views through the oak canopy and thinning some of the saplings and that mid-story layer to allow some views from the grade and the deck area. There is some invasive vegetation located within the view corridor. Mainly there's non-native Japanese holly located within this area. As we look down just at the edge of this Vista corridor, there's a lot of healthy native vegetation throughout the area. There is some bittersweet vine located in the south portion just to the south of that Vista corridor. As well as some non-native Viburnum plicatum and one really large burning bush that's located just adjacent to the coastal bank that we would be proposing to remove. To the area to the north, I guess east of the proposed Vista corridor, there's just very thin spattering of shrub honeysuckle. And I think it's shrub honeysuckle that's moved in from the adjacent property. And we'd be proposing to flush cut and remove that. The invasive cover in this area is less than 20%. It's probably between 10 and 15%. So it's very selective invasive species management throughout the areas outside of the proposed Vista corridor. And then of course, there's a very large Japanese holly that's located within the Vista corridor that we'd be proposing to remove. As far as the viburnum that was previously proposed, in order to properly maintain this vista and to eliminate the amount of ongoing vegetation management, we'd be proposing to remove that arrowwood viburnum that was located within the vicinity of the Vista corridor, sort of to delineate the naturalized area from the upland portions of the property so that property owners are not needing to prune a shrub that wants to be 15 feet tall down to a height of 5 feet. We would still, of course, delineate that naturalized area by proposing a split rail fence along that area. We'd be maintaining the viburnum that was previously proposed outside of the Vista corridor area, and then taking that viburnum that was previously proposed in this area and planting it selectively to replace the shrub honeysuckle that we're proposing to remove from within the naturalized vegetated area, the vegetated buffer zone. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about our proposal on this plan for invasive plant management, the establishment of the path. We would be proposing to just maintain a very simple path, no wider than 4 feet, covered with either a mulch or fescue grass. We defer to the commission on their preference on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Jen? Teresa, you can stop sharing, please.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jen?
Yes, thank you. A couple of things, Teresa. Okay, you can establish the Vista corridor now, but we wouldn't allow the actual work of the pruning in the Vista corridor to take place until leaf out. So in the spring, they can evaluate it then.
Yes, understood. And we have discussed that with the property owners and they completely understand the commission's position on that. So that's no problem. Yep.
All right. Just out of curiosity, how do you take a third of the height, the third of the tree height down without topping it?
So it's interesting because that's literally taken directly from Falmouth wetlands regulations. I'm sorry. So we would not be topping the trees at all. What we're really proposing to do is thin some interior canopy to allow some view windows throughout. So we can certainly remove that from the notes on the plan.
I think we actually stole that from Mashpee. So
okay, we'll blame it on that. Yeah, so we would not be reducing the height of the tree, whereas trees were basically thinning the canopy to allow vistas through.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
So you're removing some invasives and you want to allow for the natural growth. We would probably recommend that the commission require you to plant right away. Allowing for the natural growth, and we can always meet you on site after you remove I know you do very little invasive species removal compared to some of your other projects. So we want that area replanted.
Absolutely. And I think
so we would have to.
Yeah.
And the only other thing is I understand why you're moving the viburnums because they were located in the corridor, but I would also recommend the board not allow you to use was improvement planting for the house as part of the restoration of the coastal bank invasive species management. So I'm kind of having a hard time with that, but I just don't know where else to put them on the site as I'm looking. So, I mean, they're not all within that view corridor, so I still think you could put some up along that property and kind of preserve the improvement planting. Because I think that I'm quite certain that was added as a requirement, and I'm gonna blame Betsy on that one because she always is a stickler for the improvement plantings. I see your eye on your head, Betsy.
Is it possible for me to speak to that?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to share again real quick. So the improvement planting is shown here, which we do because there's an expectation that we do improvement planting because your regulations say, even though you're doing work outside the A zone, you need to provide some sort of improvement. It's difficult at times to come up with improvements. So one way was to delineate along the limit of work with some native plantings to act as like a permanent sort of reminder to the property owner not to go beyond that. So that's why at that time we hadn't contemplated a vista window. So I was thinking we could possibly move those out of the window into another place, like over here.
That would work, Mike.
That was my suggestion. I defer to Teresa on it, though.
Yeah, I mean, that would work. Or at least as many as you can, and not kind of use your improvement planting in your coastal bank restoration. And I think that's all we had. Unless Kevin has anything to add. And the sign's gone, right, Teresa?
Yes, I did reach out to the property owner yesterday after I received Alyssa's notes, and they did remove the for sale sign. Thank you.
Mr. Newton?
I have nothing to add to that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments and questions. Betsy?
No comments.
Courtney?
I'd like to see fescue grass rather than mulch on the path.
Okay.
Kevin?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Maury?
I agree with the fescue, but I also had one question. the path goes down to the salt marsh. Is there any intent? I mean, are they just gonna walk down and look at the ocean or?
Yeah, I
mean,
think
pond?
I think they just want to provide an access to get down to that area. There is a small portion of beach, but there's no proposal to do anything. I think they just wanted to be able to access the area, and we just were trying to provide that ability to access the area within the existing view corridor so that we weren't proposing access paths throughout other areas of the property.
Yeah, well, I don't think we'd probably want that, but
Right.
There's the whole thing is salt marsh. I know there's a beach past it, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just worried about kayaks and, you know, everything getting dragged across that salt marsh. Because
there's no-
path leads to nowhere is not a path.
Right, there's no proposal for that at this time. I'm not stating that if the property
We'll just put a
sells.
finding that they can't, you know, not to go across the salt marsh. Thank
Sure.
you. But I like the fence idea as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Pat,
No questions, thank you.
Peter,
No questions.
Steve,
Yeah, I anticipated this coming up after the original approval, that they would eventually come and ask for this. And as Teresa just said, maybe in the future they'll ask for other amenities to the property, but at this point, they're just adding one thing at a time. I don't have any problem with it overall, though.
excellent. All right, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other comments or questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I'll move to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Pat and second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
thank you. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Hello, Hawks Eye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve,
Pat and I.
it is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
You as well.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, Teresa.
Bye.
All right. Excuse me. Next up, continued hearings under an enforcement order. Joshua Warner, Grant Tree Service, 0 Hatchville Road, map 17-01-016-053. East Falmouth, Mass, unauthorized removal of vegetation within conservation jurisdiction on town of Falmouth owned land. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've left Mike Borselli in case he wants to make a comment. This was a violation on Conservation Commission, not only within a buffer zone to an isolated wetland that could potentially be a vernal pool, but also on property that the commission has care and control over. It took a while because everybody's incredibly busy, but Mike Borselli and Mark met out on site. They pin flagged the area of disturbance. Mike has now put it on a plan. That's all this commission needs to move forward to issuing an enforcement order. I'm going to take the square footage of that area, going to calculate out a plant count. We will tell Mr. Warner exactly what to plant, what size and what spacing for that square foot area that has been disturbed. And so I think the board can go forward tonight and issue an enforcement order, have him plant by a date certain. We have the plan, and Mark and I will come up with that planting scheme that you'd like to see. And if you'd like to see the area disturbance, I can bring that plan up, or if Mike has it up, he can share it.
I do have it, if you want me to.
Oh,
share it.
thanks, Mike. If you want to just bring.
Sure. I just wanted to say that I was chosen, I guess, to be involved because I happen to represent the property owner that's doing construction on a property that's outside jurisdiction, by the way. But one of the subcontractors evidently did some work associated with that project that was in jurisdiction, that was disturbing this area with wood chips. So we've met Mark, we pin flagged this area, we surveyed it and we shaded it in green to assist your staff in figuring out what to do to restore the areas that were disturbed by the placement of piles of wood chips in these areas.
Thank you, Mike. So at this point, Mr. Chairman, I think the board can issue an enforcement order. Kevin Newton can help me draft that up. The staff will pick the size and species of the plantings to go in that area. But I would like the commission to pick a date certain that you want those plantings to be in. And of course, they're going to need to be monitored for any die-off. And the die-off will need to be replaced. I'm thinking April 15th is an appropriate time. Or Maury, do you think that's going to be a little too early and we should push it back to April 30th? You never know.
I'd say April 30th.
April 30th. I mean, we're going to have a 70-degree Christmas. We could have a 0-degree April.
Exactly.
This day and age.
4 feet of snow on the ground.
I know. And it'll be 70 degrees at Christmas.
Mike, is your client amenable to this?
Oh, well, he's not my client. Well, he is my client, but I can't speak for him. I believe he's amenable. He has no choice. The enforcement order is going to be issued to Grant Tree. My plan is just to help facilitate getting it done. I believe he's working with Jen.
It's just easier, Mr. Chairman, and it'll be much more cleaner if the staff tells Mr. Warner exactly what he needs to do on town property. This is property, again, under the care and control of the Conservation Commission. You are the owners of this property. It was, I think the term that was used was malicious destruction of town property. So as Mike said, Mr. Warner has no choice. He needs to repair town property.
Yeah, and if I remember from the hearing, the last hearing, he just said he wanted to hear what we wanted.
I would feel much more comfortable with Mark and I coming up with the plan that we're comfortable with. It is, again, your property. We're the stewards of your property. We want to come up with a plan.
Agreed. So we're just looking, so we're in good shape to issue an enforcement order.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Besides Courtney, is there anybody that has any comments or questions? Courtney, that's very annoying.
It is.
He is cold.
In the spirit of Christmas, of course, I want to award some coal, this time to Grant Tree Service. They come in, we actually see them
Be
a number
careful,
of times
please.
on violations. And frankly, I think we need to have a special education course conducted by the commission for Grant Tree Service to understand what the regulations are. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. The Grinch lives down in Sipawissa, just so everybody knows. All right. So does anybody have any questions or comments they want to, productive questions or comments they want to add to this? All right. So I'll entertain a motion in a second to issue an enforcement order.
Harris, I move that we issue an enforcement order consistent with staff's recommendations.
Bird, second.
All right. If there's no further comments or questions or coal givings. All right. Betsy?
Filter eye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawk's eye.
Pat?
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an enforcement order. Once again, thank you, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Now I'm going to put you back into the attendees.
Okay.
You have another one?
Yes, he does.
Wow. This is the Mike Borselli meeting. All right, well, let's try to get to him quick then. Next up, Kevin and Christina Doniger, 59 Shorewood Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted construction of a patio and unpermitted reconstruction of a deck. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm just making sure that there's no one here to present Ms. Doringer. Okay, this actually has been on your agenda, I think, longer than Hui. Back in July, we went to the site for a tree removal project. Alyssa noticed a patio. Patio was built and deck was redone, which appears to be in the same footprint. Unfortunately, when we looked on GIS, that patio is built within the 100-foot buffer zone to the salt marsh and is moving closer than the present primary structure. We originally put this here matter on, I think it was an early August meeting. The Dorringers asked that, we postpone that. They wanted it postponed to September. We did that. I think the first meeting we had with the property owner, Christina Dorringer, there were some technical difficulties. She did come, she did attend the Zoom meeting in, I think, November. The matter was continued to till today so that they could contract with someone. Surveying services across the board are really backed up right now. So we were trying to give her some time. We have been unable to get in touch with Ms. Dorringer since then. She did miss your last hearing. That means we continued it to here today. Alyssa had reached out to her on December 9th to, was it December 9th? Hang on. It was, I'm sorry. She reached out on November 9th to alert Ms. Dorringer of her November 10th hearing. We received no response. We emailed again. We've received no response. I've called twice. I've left one message. Her voicemail was full one other time. And after I left the second time I called, I left a message. I followed it up with an email on December 3rd. She is not responding to us. We really were trying to help her keep some of her patio. We were willing to work with her. We can't work with someone that's not responding to our calls or our emails. All we wanted to know was, had they retained the services of a company? I know that Holmes and McGrath have given them a proposal. That's who she stated that they would be working with when she appeared before you in, I think it was late September or sometime in October. They have not contracted with Holmes and McGrath yet. We checked with them this week. So I have no other choice at this point but to recommend this board issue an enforcement order for the complete removal of that patio, restoration of the area, which was lawn, that is, and that be done by a date. And if that is not done, we will refer this matter to our council.
All right.
We've tried.
What date are you thinking?
It's going to be up to the commission. If she doesn't have to wait for the survey because we're requiring the removal of the unpermitted patio, we could require it to be removed by the end of January.
We also include in the enforcement order that there will be daily penalties accruing after that date certain by which it should be removed.
If we do that, Pat, do we have to issue a ticket every day or not?
nobody's really come down positively one way or other about it, but it's helpful to bootstrap it. You know, you have it in the order that you are subject to fines if you don't remove it by that date certain. And if in fact they prevail and arguing that they didn't get the tickets, they prevail, but we're trying to get something established. And I do think, and again, as I say, in terms of bootstrapping it, you could put it in the order and we could also issue tickets. They don't all have to be issued at the exact same time. You can do like 20 tickets at a time.
That's
But
what,
to look up.
okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was saying. Like if we just did it every Monday morning and then just did the week prior and issued
Right,
5 tickets a week.
right.
Okay, okay.
We should talk to town council about lining it up the way they want it, but my memory is that you could bundle them, you know.
I think I talked to either Jonathan Dickerson, the zoning enforcement agent, or it couldn't have been Scott. It had to have been Jonathan. He was working with Irie on one and they were bundling the tickets.
Okay.
So, okay, so a daily fine of $50. And when would the board like the patio removed?
They're seasonal, correct?
What's seasonal?
The homeowners, this is a.
Yes,
seasonal
they
home.
are seasonal.
Okay, so I say give them till March 1st. That's my opinion. Courtney?
I'm inclined to stick with the end of January, but also, I mean, isn't also part of this is that the deck was not permitted to be reconstructed? So is there?
The deck was, this is the thing, the deck was put in the same, we've compared everything. The deck was built in the same footprint. They just went from like some older red painted deck to a nice new Trex deck. The contractor that did that work did come in to pick up the RDA application for after the fact RDA. And according to Ms. Doringer, did tell her he received that permit, but he never filed the application with us.
Did they get a building permit?
They did receive a building permit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's just.
And it was
leave
issued
with the patio.
without our review.
Let's just leave it with a patio then.
Okay.
Well, should we include in this enforcement order that they have to get an after the fact RDA for the deck?
If that's what the commission would look like.
Do we need that?
We were trying to cover all the bases, attempting to work with her. So we wanted to make sure anytime we see this, we always tell somebody to file an RDA for after the fact work. So I don't see how it could hurt to put that in the enforcement, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'd say let's do that.
Okay. Kevin Newton, are you listening to all this?
Yeah.
All right, good. Because you're going to help me write these.
Anybody else have anything else? Any other comments or questions about this? All right. I'd like to hear a motion in a second to issue the enforcement order.
Have we decided on the
What date?
And you heard what I said. Nobody seems to care. Courtney said the end of January.
I'd make a motion to issue an enforcement order for March 1st for this property as described.
Second.
Harris, second.
All right. All right, so we have a motion and a second to issue an enforcement order for this with the date being March 1st, and it will include an after the fact RDA for the deck.
With daily fines of $50 if the
daily fines
is not removed. Yep. Okay.
All right. So that's the motion and the second. Any comments? All right. Betsy.
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney.
Bird,
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an enforcement order. Next up, William T. Dowling Jr., trustee, Venus Realty Trust, 6 Scallop Cove, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted removal of vegetation within conservation jurisdiction. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just promoted Nate Groshgarian up to kind of fill us in where, where we stand with this. This was the property out on
6 Scallop Cove.
Scallop Cove,
Yeah.
where there was a tremendous amount of tree removal, both in the buffer and in the wetland. There's a salt marsh, a bordering vegetated wetland, and all the a coastal bank and all the associated buffers. This was also the property where they had left some of the trees were completely like stripped of their limbs and top. So we had like kind of these like 8-foot little toy soldiers standing out there. If you can remember the pictures, if not, I can bring them up for you. I think Nate had some great shots of it as well that he might be able to share. And what it was, we asked Holmes and McGrath to go out. And what they did is located all of the trees. They located all of the stumps. They were going to retain the services of an arborist to let us know what could be done with these trees that were severely like topped and with no limbs on them. So I think Nate is here to kind of give us an update and see what we can do with his information.
Yep, sure thing. Nate Goshgarian with Holmes McGrath. Permission to share my screen, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, are you seeing the plan?
We're seeing a staff report.
Okay. All right, so yeah, let's take a look at what's going on here. This is 6 Scallop Cove. It's a rather large property, about 6,600 square feet. And like Jen said, we've got several resources on here. We've got salt marsh coming up to here. We've got that turning into fringe BVW up until this extent. This area right here is steep bank. And then these are the offsets as derived from the top of this bank. Yeah, so basically what happened was some shrubby topping or clearing along the bank and tree removal. So I'll kind of explain the key that's going on here. We've got all the trees listed, like Jen said. We've got the DBHs, and then we've got the coding of the different types of plants. The red dots we're seeing are the actual stumps. There were 36 in total. 30 of those were around 4 inches DBH. And then we've got the top trees that Jen also mentioned in this lighter orange gray. So I'll kind of flip over to the more skeletonized version of this. So yellow is top trees, stumps are red trees. And we're basically just looking to have a conversation how to kind of positively move forward on this with a restoration plan down the road. And I've been to the site several times, and I think it's just important for me to add that. And I think you met Mr. Dowling. Mr. Dowling is on board 100% and really enthusiastic about doing the right thing in this situation, which is kind of our only option in this situation. So there's been a lot of tree cutting, and at the point of going on site, we did reach out to Natasha Batchelor of Davie, and she was able to take a look at the top trees, which range from 8 to 15 feet. Initially, when we went down there, we thought most of these trees were going to be, dying pretty soon within the next year or so. But because of their height, as well as their age, there's significant epicormic growth, which is basically lateral dispersion of sprouts from the top, as well as the sides that are in response to stress and also water shortage. So her determination, as she provided in her report, was some of the following. So of approximately 15 trees that were topped, all appear to have viable buds and varying levels of response growth. Trees consisted of black oak, tupelo, pitch pine, red maple, and cedar. Current response to growth varies from 1 to 1.5 feet of epicormic latent buds under the bark growth. It can be expected that the trees will respond with 3 to 6 feet of water sprout growth under normal growing conditions. So really what we're trying to say here is kind of to our surprise, she determined that most of these trees would end up surviving. Of course, we've got to wait to the spring to get a better assessment of that, but it's not as kind of dreary as it initially seemed, although it does kind of look like a Dr. Seuss picture. But so that's where we stand right now.
All right.
Yeah, can you shut? That's great. That gives a kind of idea. If you can keep that right there, Nate.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alyssa put the 36 and 9, but those were the only trees between the salt marsh and the top of the coastal bank. Actually, when she counted them, there was 48 total stumps out there and 10 topped trees. So if you can go back, look at your plan and kind of square that with Natasha, because she has 50 top trees in her report. That would be helpful. And then the reason we went at the 36, basically 36 stumps and 9 topped in that zone was a couple of those stumps were like kind of close to the deck, and then the ones up along the side of the house we're not really too concerned with them. My concern is the ones that are actually in the BVW,
right,
and in the buffer. So I think this is a great start. I think we're going to, unfortunately, with something like this, I think we do need to wait until the spring to decide, especially from an understory perspective, because that was removed too, if we're going to have any, if we're going to be required to have them put any understory back. The commission just needs to know, needs to decide, we need to replace the 36 trees that were removed. I mean, this is not even at that point, deciding what we do with the top trees, but there were, 36 trees removed. Now, a lot of them were they were saplings. They weren't considered trees. They weren't five. They were saplings. They were oak saplings, so they were going to grow into healthy, mature trees. So the board needs to kind of contemplate what you want to do and what you want to see for the replacement of those 36 trees in that zone area, in that salt marsh to coastal bank area. You can stop sharing, Nate.
Okay.
So I don't know if the board, we can, I know Alyssa sent you the plan. If you want to think about it, we could postpone this. I mean, we're not going to be doing any planting on this property anytime soon. So I think we have some time where we can kind of thoughtfully craft something that will work in this area, considering the amount of work that was done.
Any thoughts, any comments, questions? All right, Jen, is that what you're recommending then, that we
What do you
continue
think,
it?
Nate? You want
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think time is on our side. It's our best asset right now. Time is going to give me the ability to go out there and whittle down the numbers to a much more definitive number, and also use that time to set up a plan. I mean, a lot of these trees, red maple, tupelo, these are facultative plants. We've got BVW, and we've really got to kind of think out how we're going to approach the replanting of the trees. It's a significant amount. Yes, they're going to be small, but in 10, 20 years, they're not. And we've got to consider the species and the placement, and also address the understory. So I think having that few months, and I believe Mr. Dowling has retained the services of Maria Hickey. We're in communications already in terms of prospectively how to put something comprehensive together.
And we're going to have to be careful, because a lot of these trees were in that BVW. They weren't just in a buffer. They were actually in the wetland. So
right.
As little disturbance and as little, I don't want any equipment down there. A lot of this work is going to have to be done by hand. wheelbarrows and, things like that to get these things down there, because you cannot be putting machines into this area.
100%.
It's not going to be like the one in North Falmouth.
So how long do we want to give them to put a plan together?
Nate, what do you want? You want to touch base back at the end of January or sometime in February?
We're going to get moving on this immediately, but I would appreciate that time. Yeah, the end of January, beginning of February, either one of those.
Okay, so we can give you January 19th, or we can bump you out. Give me 1 second. I left my little little thing at, I'm just trying to find a calendar. Why did I click on agendas? Why aren't they in my email? Hang on. Calendar. So we put that together. We're not meeting on.
February 26th.
Not on the 26th. So the first meeting in February would be the 2nd, right? Am I doing that right? Yep, the 2nd.
Okay.
February 2nd, Nate.
February 2nd.
It's the 3rd, I think.
I'm looking at a calendar, Courtney. It says the 2nd.
The 2nd.
Okay.
All right, Nate, I'm sorry. Yeah, Nate, would you make a formal request, please?
Yes, I'd like to formally request a continued hearing for February 2nd.
Thank you.
Harris, so moved.
Patton, second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to continue this until February 2nd, with the idea being that there would be a plan of action created and negotiated, discussed.
Yeah. Give us some time to kind of think about this and formulate a plan.
Perfect. All right. Anything else? All right. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this enforcement order hearing until February 2nd, 2022. Thank you, Nate.
All right. Thanks for your time,
Thank
everybody.
you, Nate.
All right. Next up is the Pizzuti Family Inc., 279 Wild Harbor Road, North Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted construction of a structure within conservation jurisdiction. Jen?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Newton. He has been doing a lot of the legwork for this project. And I have promoted Craig Macedonian. If I just botched your name, I apologize. I'm getting tired. He was the engineer that was working with the property owner.
Okay. Mr. Newton, why don't you start?
Absolutely. Craig Marchand, I believe is the way I pronounce it. But
Oh, I
absolutely,
did.
please.
Sorry.
Okay. I know I had it wrong last time, but I listened when you introduced yourself, and so I'm happy I got that right. Mr. Chairman and the Commission, I'll turn it over to Craig here.
Thank you. You're up, sir.
Good evening. Yeah, no worries about my name. I've gone my whole life with people saying it wrong. It doesn't bother me one bit. But good evening, Craig Marchand with Marchand and Associates. And hoping to keep it brief here. I know it's getting late, but since we last met 2 weeks ago, my client has reached out to a few different marine contractors, and I was lucky enough to have a few nice conversations with Ben Carson from Schultz Marine, who I understand has worked with you guys many times. He went to the site today actually and called me afterward. We talked some more. So he plans to float a barge in with a 30-ton crane, pull up on each of these 7 or 8 piles, give them each a light tug. If they come out great. If not, he'll get on them with a vibratory hammer, hydraulic vibratory hammer, and pull each one out. He expects it to be about a day job, with a second day hauling the piles off site, cutting them up to size and disposing of them properly. So overall, about a 2-day job. And he says it's very simple. That's just how he plans to go about it. So happy to address and answer any questions, but I think that's the general picture. And our client did reach out to more contractors just essentially to get more cost estimates, but the method of removal wouldn't really be any different.
Okay, thank you, Craig. And just to remind the board, this is that little wooden structure that was built with some pilings in place of a coconut fiber roll array that the board had permitted way back in 2006. So at this point, I think issuing an enforcement order just to have the structure removed is going to be the quickest way forward, instead of having them file, a notice to remove this. I think we could just issue an enforcement order and have them review this and continue it within the enforcement order.
Agreed.
And we can get that out quickly to them, and then they can get it out of there.
Great.
All right. Anybody have any questions or comments? Mr.
I'm
Newton?
just wondering if you're going to have to issue, if the enforcement order should include conditions under which doing it. I mean, yes, we have worked with Ben, but if it's not Ben doing the work, so it's up, Jen, it's up to you.
Oh, I know. I mean, we would need to go out with them and review it and see how they're coming in. I mean, we would do kind of like almost like a pre-construction meeting, just so we know who the contractor is that's going to be doing this work.
Okay.
And we can approve the method. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they have to float it in on a barge. The barge it has to be done by barge. And, within 2 days, and any disturbance to the bank, we'll go out there, take a lot of photographs of that whole area, and any, adverse impact to that area would need to be restored. I'm kind of worried about the use of a vibratory hammer next to that little bank, but we'll see how it goes.
All right. If that's the plan, I'd entertain a motion in a second to issue this enforcement order.
Harris, I move we issue an enforcement order as discussed.
Bird, second.
All right. Mr. Marchanda, is that clear to you?
Yes, it is. I appreciate it. And once we have a contractor selected and a time in place, we will reach out to the commission, go over, just reaffirm the methods, give you the contractor's information, and we'll go from there.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll be meeting on site with the contractor just to review the project with them. So
absolutely.
Yeah, but we've worked with Ben many times, but like Betsy said, it's an if they decide to go with an off-Cape contractor that we're not familiar with, we like to do a little handholding. That's all.
Understood. Not a problem.
Yep.
All right. So we have a motion and a second on the table to issue the enforcement order. Is there anything else? All right. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an enforcement order. Thank you, Mr. Marchanda.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you, and my apologies.
No worries. Take care.
Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
All right. Next up, continued request for a certificate of compliance. William and Linda Dubelier, 169 Metoxet Road, LLC, 169 Metoxet Road, East Falmouth, Mass. request for a certificate of compliance for Mass DEP number 25-4207. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have Mike Borselli and Brian Wall in the audience. Pat's going to have to make her disclosure, but they are requesting compliance for the fiber roll array that no longer exists out on this property. They have filed an RDA. I had the board go and look at everything. All the material was removed. We did that under an RDA. We permitted that removal work under an RDA, and I do believe it's complete. So if the board wants to move forward with issuing a certificate of compliance, there's one small issue that Brian and I need to hammer out on, but I think, you can go forward.
Okay. Mr. Borselli, can you confirm that everything's been removed?
I can, Mr. Chairman. It was done a couple days after you voted to a negative determination.
Excellent. All right. For the record, because this is what Pat does. Go ahead, Pat.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and Jen, but I've already made my disclosure on this matter when you were before us earlier.
Perfect. All right. So this is kind of simple. Anybody have any questions or comments? All right. Mr. Wall, do you have anything to add before we?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. So I'd entertain a motion and a second to issue a certificate of compliance.
Bird, so move.
Harris, second.
Guys are getting sluggish late in the night. All right. So we have a motion and a second on the table to issue a certificate of compliance. There's nothing else. Betsy?
Filter aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued a certificate of compliance.
Thank you,
Figuratively
Mr.
speaking.
Chairman. Thank you to.
Thank you, Mr. Borselli. Mr.
Thank
Wall?
you, Mike. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Have a
everybody.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas to everyone, and Mr. Bird, you're not as grinchy as you portray yourself.
Oh.
Please don't start.
Have a good night.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Good night.
Merry Christmas.
All right. Next up, vote order of conditions. First up, Paula J. Coscom, 2 Pierce Place, lots 2 and 3, Falmouth, Mass.
Okay, bear with me, guys. I left that entire stack with my other stack that I was supposed to bring home. 2 Pierce Place is one of the vista corridors or view easement corridors over at Pondlet Place. This was presented by Mark Manganello. It's going to be very similar to the one you recently permitted earlier this year for Jill Park. And then once they all expire, because these view easements are on Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuary's property, the goal is to create a management plan for all of the view easements, so that Salt Pond isn't trying to track 3 different orders of conditions on their property, but these orders that they don't control. So I think it was pretty straightforward. There's a lot of invasives. He's going to be replanting the area. I can't remember the species off my head again. I left my stack back at the office. So I don't think there were any huge concerns with it.
I have a note about, did Nate provide BVW data sheets?
No, but I can get Mark to send me those BVW data sheets.
Okay. Anybody have anything different they'd like to see in there? All right, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
Move to accept the order as discussed.
Pat and second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing else. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks eye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, David and Mandy Coonan, 134 Sitters Pond Road, Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just trying to bring this up. This was Holmes and McGrath's plan. Concrete steps in place. They were doing a proposed addition and proposed deck with required mitigations. And then proposed restoration plantings. And then they were doing some invasive species removal and restoration. Anybody?
I don't have any special notes on here.
Jen, I have something. No black filter fabric.
Thank you. I was trying to remember. This is Marie's project. Thank you.
And also that there was no equipment below the bank.
Yeah, got it. Thanks, Maura.
All right, is there anything else anybody wants in there? All right, I'll take a motion in a second.
I'll move to issue an order as discussed.
And second.
All right, again, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing else. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks eye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Nancy L. and Paul F. Chiotti, 36 T-Ticket Path, Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they're doing some proposed addition and a covered patio with some just about 1,100 square feet of mitigation. This is where the was it the DPW that wanted to see where their construction access was? But it's on the other side of, so Perch Pond's here, and then it's between, path is between Perch Pond and this house. It's on the opposite side of the road from the pond.
Off Norris Path.
Yeah.
Again, I have a note about the BVW sheets.
Yep.
Okay.
I can reach out to Tom on BVW if they.
I have a note about a special condition regarding a tree. I don't know what that means. Does anybody remember?
Was it protecting a tree?
I would think so.
Well, they are required to add one tree with mitigation, so maybe that was it.
Okay.
Or maybe one was cut. I can't remember. I don't have that plan right in front of me. One could have been cut, so we'll just have them add a tree.
Okay.
I think that was it.
Yeah, I think it was too.
All right, does anybody else?
New
have
trees
anything
after
else?
winter damage?
Sorry?
Was it 2 new trees after winter damage?
Possibly.
Okay.
All right, anything else? All right, I'll take a motion.
Move to accept the order as discussed.
Harris, second.
We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing else. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Alyssa and George Syhos, 94 Emmons Road, Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was BSS's plan. It was a dock project, but they were also, we discovered that there was an old outstanding order, an old order of conditions that had a planting requirement that the plantings weren't doing very well. So they're going to be reestablishing that old planting requirements. And then they're adding additional shrubs for an extra walk and patio. So they're adding that. And that's about it.
For the record, I have that Maury and Steve are not on this quorum.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Anybody have anything they want to see in here?
I have a note about a BVW data sheets. Did we get those?
Yes, this is the one where it was, there was no BVW. They had Mark Manganello go back out there. It's actually Inland Bank. There's no BVW out there.
Okay.
I'll take a motion in a second. Oh,
Any
sorry.
monitoring, I'm sorry, is there going to be any monitoring of the mitigation plans since they failed?
That is
last time?
completely up to the commission. If the commission wants us to put a monitoring requirement in there, we would be happy to. We will write whatever you'd like us to write.
Well, I'm just thinking since the last time was a failed effort.
Okay, we'll put one in.
Okay.
I'll move to.
Finding and then add the special condition.
I'll move to accept the order as discussed, including the monitoring provision.
Have a second.
We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Or anything else? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Woods Hole, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket Steamship Authority, SSA, foot of Railroad Avenue, Woods Hole, Mass.
This is the other, they have an issue with another piling system. So they're creating another huge, almost, what did they call it? Call it a gravity system, where they have the piling and then they're doing sheet piling and then 2 more pilings and then they're filling the whole thing with concrete. And it's supposed to be able to take the force of the ferries hitting it because they can't drive it down as deep as they need it to.
Oh, yeah.
I think they already had
hard to
those 2
imagine.
other pilings.
They're using Tremie concrete. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, fine.
Remember, they're pumping the concrete. They're going to put the hose down and pump it from the bottom up, and then it's going to come up, and then the slurry is going to come down, and it's all going to be contained in the boom until it settles out.
Yeah,
sure it is. It's kind of amazing that 65 feet down isn't enough.
Those ferries
Big
are big.
boats.
Yeah, yeah. All right,
That's
this
a
is
lot of
similar to the one
force.
we did last year ago, right?
Move to accept the order as discussed.
That thing's as big as my house.
Second,
That's a concrete structure is, wow.
The one we did a couple of weeks ago, it was like 26 feet wide. So I took a tape measure and I ran across my house and I like didn't quite get to the end, but I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm
Gives you
just
perspective.
surprised they didn't put in any reinforcing.
Ugh.
Well, I mean, it's not a good thing for concrete by itself.
This is, yeah, so this is an amendment to their order. We were also promised by poor Bill Cludia that he won't come in for any more amendments, but I don't really believe him.
All right, does anybody have anything else they want to put in there? We do have a motion and a second, so if there's nothing else. All right, Betsy,
Untitled aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
I'm not on the quorum.
I'm sorry. I still wanted to include you though. Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It
You
is
are on the,
unanimous.
you
We
are on the
have-
quorum, Maury. It was last
And,
week.
okay, aye.
All right, it's unanimous plus one. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, last up, Seascape Association, Inc., 0 Waterside Drive, A Beach, in quotes, A, North Falmouth, Mass.
This is, they want to bring in the sand because of the runoff from their storm damage where they created the gully underneath their boardwalk. And they want to replace the sand to kind of build back the area and reestablish their boardwalk. There was a request that they be able to allow this work kind of in perpetuity. And I really have some concerns with that because we never know how big the storms are going to be, how much sand is going to be lost. So I'd rather deal with it on a event by event basis.
Yep.
Agreed. And it's all going to be done by hand. I have notes up to that effect.
Right.
And the source is the same as existing.
Correct.
Do we want to limit the amount of sand? He said it would take about 10 cubic yards.
That's fine. We'll give them 10 cubic yards.
All right. Anybody have anything different they want in there? Additional?
I think
All
they
right,
wanted to reestablish the berm as well to keep the runoff.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It was the runoff that really caused that big gully.
It was. Okay.
Need to keep the drainage clean. Anything else? All right, let's have a motion in a
Accept
second.
the order is discussed.
Harris, second.
Wow. Steve, you got beat. All right, we got a motion in a second. There's nothing else. Betsy,
Untitled aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. And a reminder, that's all we have tonight. As a reminder, we have no meeting for the next 2 weeks. So let's see you guys next year.
Actually, no, you're not. You're gonna need a meeting.
Special meeting, yeah.
We're gonna need a special meeting to vote orders of conditions. Sorry.
What?
You closed a couple of hearings.
You get the
Yeah.
Should have continued them.
Yeah, you closed a couple of hearings, so we're gonna have to vote the orders and
I want to revote.
Revote or revolt?
Well,
Both.
Yes.
It's Kevin likes the meetings really early in the morning.
I know
I was
he
gonna say
does.
7:30, here we come.
Well, I was thinking 7 or 6:30, just for Kevin.
Okay.
Oh,
All right,
Who's making
so
breakfast?
guys, I'm not in town on Monday and it won't be there. So I mean, we could do next Tuesday or Wednesday, or we could do the week after. Which one do you prefer?
Why don't we
We
do it
closed one.
sooner rather than later?
All right, so what works for everybody, next Tuesday or next Wednesday?
Tuesday for me.
Either works.
I can do Tuesday.
Yeah, I can't do Tuesday.
yeah, I have a problem. Well, I have a potential problem.
We're
My
talking
wife-
7:30?
You can do it whatever time you guys want to do it. I mean, I'm at Zoom. I can do whatever time you want during the day or night. It doesn't matter.
How about noon on Tuesday?
Noon?
It's hard for Jamie.
No, it's fine. I can do that.
Yeah.
It's Zoom.
Okay.
Tuesday at noon?
I can do that.
Everybody that can make Tuesday at noon, raise their hand.
This
I
is for
don't
Kevin.
know.
All right, Kevin, we don't need you.
I'll try. I'll try.
Yeah.
All right, so I got Pat, I got Steve, I got Jamie, I got Betsy, Peter, yes? Peter, you're muted.
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, I got 4, and then
You got
Courtney, you're
Courtney.
good, right?
Yep.
Okay, I got 5 of you, you're fine.
I can try and make it on.
Yeah, that's fine.
What-
I got 5.
Justin's
What time
got
are
his
you
hand
gonna
up.
have it?
We only have one order, right, to vote?
No, you have like 2.
2.
Justin has his hand up. Justin wants to say something.
I'll be there.
Okay, thank you, Justin.
You're the man.
All right, noontime on Tuesday.
All right.
Okay. So
One last motion and second.
I gotta post this.
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Our
second that.
second.
All right.
Peter and
Stand up
Kevin,
again,
if
or
I
did he
don't
not
see you, happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to all of you.
Motion and a second to adjourn.
Oh,
Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Third, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Arlo Hawk's Eye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Look
Steve.
at Justin.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Happy
Night,
holidays.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Happy holidays.